Chapter 24. During the morning lesson, Teacher Pan appeared on the dais on time, as usual, and the class instantly fell silent. Next, I have 3 announcements to make. Teacher Pan swept her gaze over the class and cleared her throat. The first thing is about the Shadow Stream assassination. As we all know, this assassination attempt, Shadow Stream had suffered a crushing defeat. The master of Shadow Stream also immediately issued a reward of 100 million to recruit super assassins, intending to launch a terrorist attack on the school for revenge. The students all held their breaths. Teacher Pan smiled, but you don't have to worry for the time being. According to reliable sources, after the bounty was issued, it was quickly revoked. Why is that? Someone raised his hand and asked. Teacher Pan spread her hands. Shadow Stream's own first-class killers were completely wiped out, and 3 of the top 20 killers on the international killer ranking list were directly killed. No one dares to come anymore. Furthermore, the Huaxiao government obtained 9 Shadow Stream assassins' corpses in one go this time, which played an important role in determining the precise coordinates of Shadow Stream's base. The second thing I want to announce is, at that moment, Teacher Pan gave a harmless smile. Because the internationally renowned killer Su Ing died on the sports field, the cultivation police have decided to seal it off for the time being in order to collect evidence. During this period, the playground will be closed for a week. The physical education class will be changed to a talisman class, and I'll take over. I believe none of you have any objections, right? Almost all the students' faces twitched. Who the F***CK dares to object? Among them, sports committee member Super Chen's face was the ugliest. Taking up physical education class at the drop of a hat, this was clearly not treating him as a leader. The sports committee member was practically non-existent. As a veteran who had taught countless students, Teacher Pan could guess what the students were thinking just by looking at their expressions. I know some of you must be unhappy. However, I still hope that all of you can cherish your time in high school. Because of the school's perfect response to this incident, the city's leaders have decided to make an exception and put our number 60 high school on the list of candidates for next year's key high schools. Huawa Water Curtain Group will also invest in our school, and it is expected that we will complete the school's spirit gathering array this year and upgrade the relevant hardware facilities to the standard of a key city. Speaking up to this point, Teacher Pan couldn't hold back her joy. Let us give our applause to student Lotus Sun. Pa 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 pa. Suddenly, thunderous applause rang out in the class, followed by a series of exclamations. A key city high school. Our school actually has the chance to be promoted to a key city high school. A spirit gathering array. Mom finally doesn't have to worry about me napping in class. Applause was inevitable. When choosing a high school, who didn't want to get into a key city high school? Unfortunately, the passing score was not high enough, so he entered an ordinary high school. Number 60 High now had a chance to be upgraded to a key city high school. Therefore, all the graduates of this batch were all graduates from top high schools. Not only that, after the school became a key city high school, the facilities, welfare, and environment would be upgraded. Everyone would have the opportunity to experience the treatment of a real key city high school. The sudden applause made Lotus Sun blush, and she looked a little shy. It's been hard on you all this time. I'm sorry for the trouble. In the future, I hope everyone can give me some pointers. How does it feel to have a rich classmate? At this moment, everyone present felt the same way, and that was only one word: awesome. Rich people are willful. Looking at this scene, Teacher Pan nodded in satisfaction. Since the school had been upgraded to a key city high school, her salary as a pioneer teacher at number 60 high school was going to rise again. This week, there will be an exchange activity between the student council of the key city schools. My elite class will send 5 students for 4 days of learning. The location will be number 59 high school, and the school will take care of their food and accommodation. Speaking up to this point, Teacher Pan paused, then continued. It just so happens that the school leaders have given all the spots for this exchange opportunity to our elite class. What the hell? For days, I heard that number 59 high school had a lot of big-tit girls. I wonder how Teacher Pan plans to allocate these 5 spots. It was obvious that the school had given all the spots to Elite Class 1 because of Lotus Sunday. Huagwa Water Curtain Group had given number 60 high school such a large subsidy. How could they not cling to such a thick thigh? Furthermore, as number 60 high school's most beautiful girl in terms of wealth, knowledge, and beauty, Lotus Sun would definitely occupy one of the 5 spots. Who would the remaining 4 spots be allocated to? While everyone was talking animatedly, the corners of Teacher Pan's old-fashioned lips curled up slightly, and there was a hint of craftiness in her smile. The students whose names I'll call out will receive a notice. Go home tonight and prepare the items listed on the notice, then add them to the WeChat group by QR code. Gather at the school gate at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Everyone held their breaths as they waited for the results. Lotus Sunday, Teacher Pan called out the first name. No one was surprised by this name, and it could be said that they had already completely guessed it. This was the strongest front no. 60 High School could put on the top campus beauty. Sending Lotus Sun out would definitely increase the other people's impression of the entire student union delegation. Super Chun. After all, he represented the school. Considering that there might be some physical competition, it was still within everyone's understanding to send him out. Third, Hirogwa. It could be said that the students in class weren't surprised by this name. It was inevitable that there would be disputes and disagreements in student union exchanges, and at times like this, someone who could talk was needed. Political science representative Hirogwa could be said to be the best candidate. Then, Featherlin. To do a good job, a worker must first sharpen his tools. Know yourself and your enemy, and you will emerge victorious in every battle. As a top student in the class and a veteran Fujoshi, Featherlin was more suited than anyone else to infiltrate student organizations outside the school and spy on information. Finally, there was only one spot left. The students who hadn't been called out clenched their fists tightly, their faces full of anticipation as they prayed. Only Wang Ling seemed to have already seen how things would turn out. Sure enough, Teacher Pan called out the last name. Wang Ling. Wang Ling? What the hell? His grades are average, and he doesn't have any obvious specialties. Some people expressed their dissatisfaction. Of course, most people weren't satisfied with this result. But Teacher Pan was in the end Teacher Pan, a pioneer teacher who fought on the front lines all year round at number 60 high school. With just a few words, she had resolved this crisis. Student Wang Ling obtained a 3S score in the entrance examination, which is unprecedented. Hearing this, the boys were silent and the girls were speechless. In terms of his results in the entrance examination, Wang Ling was indeed earth-shattering and invincible. If this was the reason, no one present had the right to refute it. Of course, the school leaders think that luck might also have played a part. Teacher Pan smiled. So, student Wang Ling was sent out as our number 60 high school's mascot. Oh, so that was it. This explanation was immediately accepted by everyone. Chapter 25. After that, Wang Ling received a list of the items he needed to bring for the 4-day inter-school exchange. In addition to basic school supplies and a change of clothes for the evening, the list also required him to bring a spirit sword for the flying sword exchange activity. And on the last line of the entire list, there was a special bold and eye-catching note. Must wear the school uniform. Wang Ling already had no energy to complain about school uniforms, because the whole country's school uniform aesthetic was the same. He didn't believe that number 59 high school uniform could be any better. The only troublesome thing now was how to make himself appear as low-key as possible during the 4-day inter-school exchange activity. Whether it was Old Antique, who was leading the team this time, or the other 4 people, Wang Ling was very wary of them. Perhaps the only good news was that Li Xianjing hadn't been called on. Gazing at the notice, Wang Ling sighed. In any case, this wasn't an easy matter to deal with, and he needed to be cautious. Any suspicious actions could increase the attention and suspicions of others towards him. There are some things to take note of on the exchange notice, which needed to be reviewed and signed by the parents. When Wang Ling got home in the evening, he directly threw the notice at Father Wang. Father Wong took a fountain pen straight out of his pocket and signed his name in a flamboyant flourish. "You're not going to take a look?" Wong Ling was very surprised. Father Wong usually read the school notices more seriously than the morning newspapers. "It's an off-campus activity, so there's nothing to take note of. There's nothing to look at. Who can beat you?" Father Wong said. Father Wong pushed up his black-rimmed glasses and picked up the evening newspaper on the table. "The news of the Shadow Stream assassins being wiped out at your school has spread like wildfire these past few days. The person who died the most miserably had his entire body smashed to pieces, and it said that even his golden core was smashed to smithereens. You didn't do it, did you?" Wong Ling. Seeing that Wong Ling wasn't saying anything, Father Wong sighed deeply. "It's a special case this time, but be more careful next time." Wong Ling spread his hands and said helplessly, "He started it. I didn't even fight back." Father Wong put down the newspaper and sighed. He looked at Wong Ling meaningfully and said, "Although he was courting death, you have to control yourself in the future. In any case, leave him an intact corpse. You see, this has caused a lot of trouble for our forensic colleagues in the identification work. I still have to restore the bone fragments piece by piece and then put them back together." Forget it. It's not easy for Ling Ling. If it wasn't for that talisman seal, this person would have probably been devoured into nothingness by the backlash. Mother Wong walked out of the kitchen with a bowl of boiling hot fish soup, put on the dining table, and untied her apron. "You two wash your hands and get ready to eat." Wong Ling stared at the fish soup for a long while. Star grouper? Wong Ling remembered that this fish clearly didn't taste very good, but it was exceptionally expensive. Unless there were distinguished guests at home, Mother Wong would only buy one during the festive season. Even if Wong Ling didn't say it, Mother Wong immediately understood his expression. Little Ming was supposed to come today, and I wanted to ask him to stay for dinner, but he had to rush back because of an emergency. It's a pity that I've cooked 8 hours of grouper fish. You two should eat more today. Wong Ling. Sure enough, this annoying guy had come. Xiaoming was Wong Ling's cousin. Unlike Wong Ling, Wong Ming was a genius in another sense. Although both of them had unparalleled cultivation talent, Wong Ming was more focused on scientific research. At just 22 years old, an exception had been made for him to be accepted into the Cultivation Academy of Science, and he became its youngest academician. Until now, Wong Ming's identity hadn't been officially made public and had become a state secret. For Huaxiao's military, this man's brain was even more terrifying than a holy weapon. The most direct proof of this was the talisman seal that had always been stuck to Wong Ling's arm. Although Wong Ling had drawn it based on ancient texts, it had incorporated the black technology that Wong Ming had created, combining the principles of cultivation with the most advanced science in Huaxiao Nation. It was because of this scientific component that the talisman had been greatly strengthened on its original basis, perfectly suppressing Wong Ling's aura. To a large extent, it was thanks to Wong Ming's help that Wong Ling was able to hide his identity. But Wong Ling didn't have much of a good impression of this cousin of his. This was a rather unruly person who absolutely wouldn't allow himself to fail. Wong Ling remembered that when he was 6 years old, he had slapped 12-year-old Wong Ming and sent him flying. Wong Ming had always taken it to heart and would definitely challenge Wong Ling again whenever he had the chance. So far, Steward Wong Ming had issued 99 challenges, and Wong Ling had never been defeated. Furthermore, during these 99 challenges, the talisman seal had been upgraded one after another, limiting most of Wong Ling's strength. But the person who had lost in the end was still Wong Ming, so whenever he heard Wong Ming's name, Wong Ling always felt rather irritated. When on earth would this man, who would challenge him at the slightest disagreement, give up? But Father and Mother Wong didn't think much of it and felt that the two brothers were very close. Otherwise, why would Wong Ming keep worrying about the talisman seal? Could it be that he had nothing better to do? Wong Ling looked at the two of them. You two are right. He just had nothing better to do. Father Wong looked at Mother Wong reproachfully and asked, It's rare for little Ming to come today. Why didn't you persuade him? Little Ming hasn't been here for a while. Little Ming prioritizes national affairs. How could I have persuaded him otherwise? Mother Wang said with a little regret. Next time, I'll definitely let Little Ming stay here and sleep with Ling Ling, so the two brothers can get to know each other better. Wang Ling really wanted to burst out with profanity. Father Wang suddenly realized what was wrong. Oh no, we can't let them sleep together. Otherwise, what if Ling Ling doesn't sleep properly and punches Little Ming to death? That's enough. The couple chatted, but in the end, it was Father Wang who got back on track. By the way, why did Little Ming specially come here this time? Mother Wang instantly patted her head. She had almost forgotten about the important matter. She looked at Wang Ling and asked, Ling Ling, how many more days do you think your talisman seal will last? Wang Ling remembered that it had been half a year since he had last replaced the talisman seal. He counted on his fingers. It would be at least 3 days, at most 5, before the spirit energy in the talisman seal would completely disappear. At that time, his aura would be completely released and exposed to the public. When that time came, even Wang Ling himself didn't know what would happen. Only 3 to 5 days left. Little Ming said that the upgraded talisman seal will be delivered as soon as possible this week. Mother Wang was suddenly a little worried, because the last time Wang Ling's aura had leaked out uncontrollably, the entire Star City had been inexplicably cut off for 10 days. There shouldn't be a problem with time. Father Wang nodded and looked at Mother Wang, who was frowning deeply. If you're really worried, let Jinka stay with him. Jinka was the second sword that Father Wang had found for Wang Ling after he had broken the big magic sword when he was 1 year old. This sword had been with Wang Ling since he was a child, and was the only spirit sword that he had signed an official contract with. It was just that the quality of this spirit sword was a little special. Chapter 26. The small wooden sword had a very peculiar origin. Father Wang had bought it from the flower and bird market for 998 yuan. Wang Ling remembered that he had only been 3 years old when he had first seen it. The little wooden sword had grown up with him since he was a child, and he had always had special feelings for it. Now he was 16 years old. The small wooden sword had been with him for a whole 13 years. It was just a street stall product that Father Wang had bought. But the most amazing thing about it was that the peachwood blade seemed to be mixed with a mysterious substance that even Wang Ling couldn't see through, which played an important role in limiting his abilities. Thus, compared with the big brand spirit swords on the market, which were made of priceless materials, this ordinary-looking small wooden sword was the one that Wang Ling was least likely to damage. Furthermore, when the gate between worlds had descended on the human world 6 years ago, this small wooden sword had miraculously given birth to a sword spirit. Its name was Jinka. That night, Wang Ling rummaged through his room and finally found his intelligent wristwatch. Wang Ling had never had the fortune to enjoy this type of smart electronic product, and had always been rather indifferent to it. Because as long as he lost control of his emotions, the wristwatch would be affected by the magnetic field and destroyed. Of course, there was another very important reason. Wang Ming had personally made this wristwatch for him. Compared with other smart products, anything that had passed through Wang Ming's hands wouldn't be easily destroyed by Wang Ling. Wang Ming had said that he had given the wristwatch to Wang Ling, but Wang Ling had seen through Wang Ming's ploy with one glance. This man had been trying in vain to defeat Wang Ling since he was a child. Thus, Wang Ling had hidden some kind of monitoring software on this wristwatch, which could feed back some data generated from Wang Ling's daily activities to Wang Ming. This absolutely wasn't Wang Ling's imagination, but something he had personally read in Wang Ming's mind on his 15th birthday. Wang Ling stared at the wristwatch for a long time, and finally put it on with a gloomy face. If it wasn't for the fact that he would be going out for the next few days, he would never have so easily undone the seal on this wristwatch. Wang Ling knew how to use the wristwatch. It worked the same way as the popular smartphones of the past. It was just that it was more integrated with virtual space technology. The software inside was already installed. Wang Ling looked at the row of software projected in the air and finally fixed his eyes on the green WeChat icon. Very quickly, he entered the interface. This wasn't Wang Ling's first time using WeChat. If it weren't for the fact that he was a natural nemesis of electronic products, he could already be considered a long-time WeChat user. He used his memory to search for the accounts he had registered before, logged in, and then joined the WeChat group according to the QR code listed on the list. Soon, a system notification came. User Ling has joined the WeChat group Daily Life of Mantis Shrimps. This user is not a friend of any of the group members. Please pay attention to the safety of your assets and false information. Looking at the group members, Wang Ling realized that basically everyone who was going to participate in the exchange meet tomorrow had joined, and he was the last to do so. Lotus Sun, Feather Lin, Order? Could this be classmate Wang Ling's WeChat? Super Chun. The name exudes an aura of great simplicity, which is indeed classmate Wang Ling's style. Student Wang Ling? Say hello. Looking at the messages that had popped up, Wang Ling habitually replied with an ellipsis. Master of Dopey sent a funny face. Ellipsis, confirming that it's classmate Wang Ling, then Wang Ling sent another ellipsis. The WeChat group immediately fell into a brief, awkward silence. After 2 weeks of interaction and getting to know each other, most of the people in class had already accepted Wang Ling's reticent personality. But Master of Dopey was the only one who felt very awkward, because this aloof iceberg monster just had to be his F***king deskmate. The two of them saw each other all the time, but unfortunately, they hadn't exchanged more than 10 sentences since the start of the semester. Now, even chatting online could cause an awkward silence. This was heart-wrenching, buddy. Fortunately, Old Antique immediately played the role of a warming angel. Students, please gather at the school gate on time at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Almost at the same time, everyone sent an okay gesture. Lotus Sun, is everyone ready to use their spirit swords? Old Antique sent a facepalm emoji. Classmate Lotus Sun, you're right. The spirit sword exchange meet between our 3 schools this time is the highlight. When the time comes, the leaders of each school will be there in person, and even city leaders will come to observe. I hope that everyone will be able to prepare a suitable spiritual sword. It had been less than 2 weeks since the start of the semester, and they had only studied less than 3 spirit sword lessons in total. But spirit sword training and education began at a young age. After signing the contract, a suitable spirit sword would need at least 5 years of adjustment before it could reach the point where it could be used. Furthermore, it was even more difficult for a spirit sword to give birth to a sword spirit. It required enduring patience and careful care. Of course, the sword spirits of those branded first-class spirit swords and immortal swords on the market were artificially cultivated. Although it was undeniable that they were powerful, when it came to truly wielding them, they were far from being as well-coordinated as naturally cultivated sword spirits. Very quickly, Superchun posted a picture. In the picture was the spirit sword that Superchun was currently using. The bright red scabbard didn't hide the hot-blooded and fanatical nature of the sword user. The super character, which had been carefully carved into the hilt, was already faintly fading. Superchun, it's called Strength Chow. It was a birthday present from my parents when I was 10. It's already signed a contract with me, and we've been working together for 6 years. Old Antique sent a thumbs up. Strength Chow, that's very classmate Superchun's character. Just from the luster of the scabbard, I can see that classmate Superchun usually takes great care of his spirit sword. Teacher, you flatter me. Superchun sent a sighing emoji. Unfortunately, Strength Chow hasn't given birth to a sword spirit yet. Nurturing a sword spirit isn't something that can happen overnight. Classmate Superchun is so patient. I believe that day won't be far away. After encouraging him, Old Antique began his daily lecture. Everyone must be patient when nurturing a sword spirit. Unless it's absolutely necessary, you can't give up easily. Once a spirit sword has a sword spirit, it will have a soul, and a sword with a soul can be upgraded like a normal cultivator. Of course, this is limited to naturally bred sword spirits. Artificial sword spirits are predetermined and can't be upgraded. Is that so? Teacher, please tell us more. Several students in the group showed great interest. Old Antique sent a long voice message in a meaningful and heartfelt manner as he explained patiently. Your current Spirit Sword course teaches basic maintenance of Spirit Sword. You'll only be able to understand the advanced Spirit Sword lessons on flying swords and how to nurture a sword spirit once you get to university. Your current task is to work hard to nurture your relationship with your Spirit Sword and strive to nurture a sword spirit before you graduate. Chapter 27. At the Spirit Sword Exchange Meet, students from each school could demonstrate their rapport with their Spirit Swords through different competitions. This not only reflected the students' personal accomplishments, but also the school's spirit and discipline. Whether it was for internal or external events, the Spirit Sword Exchange Meet was indispensable and had already become a traditional school activity. Because of the Shadow Stream assassination incident, Number 60 High School had made an exception this year to become a candidate for a key city high school, and this student union exchange activity between the two major high schools in Peiyuan District had been held. On the surface, it was a competition between students, but in fact, it was a game between the two schools in front of the city leaders. And the Spirit Sword Exchange Meet had obviously become the key to this game. Thus, the teachers selected for the group training this time from number 59 High School had extremely rich experience in teaching Spirit Swords and practical operation. When Old Antique appeared on the list for this exchange meet as the teacher leading the group training, the school leaders of number 59 High School were all stupefied. Sending a bookworm to teach history. What on earth was number 60 High School thinking? Number 59 High School's headmaster felt that number 60 High School had probably already given up on resisting. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun were probably the only ones who were as clear as a mirror because they knew how strong Old Antique was. This was a man who had killed a first-class Shadow Stream killer at the peak late Golden Core stage in one blow with just a piece of chalk. It could be said that Old Antique had hidden himself very deeply. This was a man with a story, and more so than any of the teachers in the two schools. Although Wang Ling still didn't know why Old Antique had come to teach at number 60 High School, he was very clear. This time, the school leaders had sent Old Antique to personally lead the team. The outcome of this Spirit Sword Exchange meet was basically set in stone. So looking at the overall situation, Wang Ling felt that number 60 High School's headmaster Chun was the real cunning one. It was already close to 10 o'clock in the evening, but Wang Ling's WeChat group still hadn't died down. After Super Chun, the others also took out their Spirit Swords one after another. Ghost Tooth was Hirogu's Spirit Sword. According to Master of Dopey, this Spirit Sword had been personally forged for him by his grandfather's generation. It had been forged using the canine tooth of a third-level spirit beast, a night demon tiger, and was as white as jade. The edge of the sword was faintly visible. It was densely covered with black veins, which looked like the intersecting fangs of a malicious spirit. Hence, it was named Ghost Tooth. Master of Dopey had taken short video, and it was obvious that he cherished his Spirit Sword. His overall status was probably second only to the parrot on his shoulder, Erden. After Hirogu posted the short video, he added a string of text. My father personally gave me this sword when I was 8 years old and signed a contract with me. It has been with me for 8 years now and still has not given birth to a sword spirit. Super Chin sent 3 bad luck in a row. F***K. Not even 8 years. 8 years. 8 years is nothing. Feather Lynn sent a broken-hearted emoji, and then she also showed her big sword. What surprised everyone was that Feather Lynn was actually using 2 swords. Super Chun, dual swords? Feather Lynn. It's a mother-child sword. I named them Wang Ming and Wang Ji. They've been with me for 9 years. A whole 9 years. It didn't even nurture a sword spirit. 9 years. Super Chun felt a trace of despair. Seeing this, Old Antique continued to explain. The mother and child swords gave birth to twin sword spirits. The incubation period was longer than that of ordinary spirit swords. However, 9 years was indeed a little too late. Is Feather Lynn not attentive enough usually? Not paying attention? How is that possible? Feather Lynn sent a frantic emoji in the group. Teacher Wang, I'm innocent. I let Wang Ming and Wang Ji communicate with each other every day, and after so many years of careful observation, I've even successfully distinguished their offensive and defensive attributes. How could I not be attentive? Master of Dopey finally couldn't take it anymore, and couldn't help replying, "Elder sister, are you sure these two swords are both male? Mother-child sword. It sounds like a man and a woman, right? It can't even be a lesbian, right?" Old Antique sent a sweating emoji. A misunderstanding of the spirit sword itself can indeed cause a delay in the incubation of a sword spirit. After reading Old Antique's reply, Feather Lin typed a colon, and then couldn't help asking, "What about classmate Lotus Sun's spirit sword?" Super Chun. I really want to see classmate Lotus Sun's sword. It must be super awesome. It was obvious that a lot of thought and a lot of money had gone into the young miss of Huawa Water Curtain Group's personal spirit sword. Compared with other second-generation rich kids who like to show off, Lotus Sun's daily life was much more low-key, and she didn't have the habit of showing off. This was because she had always felt that this kind of behavior was very low-class and not conducive to building her image as a national beauty. So under normal circumstances, unless someone else asked her to, she would never take the initiative to share a photo. A moment later, all the friends in the group saw the photo Lotus Sun had uploaded. Lotus Sun, my sword is called Mysterious Sea. This was a spirit sword that was completely azure in color. The blade of the sword was transparent and flawless, and it emitted bursts of blue halos. Even though it was just a projection, everyone could feel the aura of the boundless ocean. Master of Dopey couldn't help exclaiming, "Mysterious Sea? What a domineering name. How long has it been with classmate Lotus Sun?" Lotus Sun pondered for a while, and then replied, "This sword has been under contract with me since it was born for a whole 16 years. Super Chun, Featherlin, Master of Dopey. 16 years, sure enough. Comparisons were odious. Even Old Antique sent a rare compliment. The blue halo on the sword is the spirit essence of a sword spirit. It looks like classmate Lotus Sun has already incubated a sword spirit. Of course, family background is one thing, but classmate Lotus Sun's spirit sword is bright in color, distinct in texture, transparent and sparkling with spirit light, and has been properly maintained. You must have spent a lot of effort to cultivate a rapport with your spirit sword. As expected of classmate Lotus Sun, Lotus Sun sent a fist salute emoji. "Teacher Wong, you flatter me." At this point in the spirit sword sharing segment, someone finally realized that it seemed that Wang Ling hadn't shared his spirit sword yet. Super Chin sent 3 question marks in a row. "Classmate Wang Ling, where's your spirit sword? Aren't you going to take it out for a walk?" Wang Ling. At first, Wang Ling had wanted to play dead and muddle his way through, but when he saw that everyone had shared his spirit sword, if he continued to hide it, it would inevitably look like he didn't fit in. And this kind of strange behavior would often garner even more attention. This wasn't what Wang Ling wanted to see. After careful consideration, Wang Ling finally shared his photo. Then, Chapter 28. At that moment, Wang Ling's passive silence skill was activated once again, and the WeChat group fell into a bewildering silence once more. Even Old Antique couldn't say a word when he saw the photo, which was enough to show how lethal it was. As Wang Ling's deskmate, Master of Dopey Hirogwa had always felt that Wang Ling's cold shoulder skills were no less terrifying than weapons of mass destruction. Obviously, everyone was shocked by this wooden sword, and they began to doubt their lives. When all was said and done, Old Antique was Old Antique. As a man who had weathered great storms, after 5 long minutes, his unfocused eyes finally came back to focus on the soft keyboard in the air, and he anxiously typed a few words. "Classmate Wang Ling, are you serious?" Wang Ling's reply was as concise as ever, and he was a man of few words. This time, even Old Antique had nothing to say. As for his companions, they all had different thoughts. Super Chun. I never thought that classmate Wang Ling's family would actually be so poor. No wonder he's usually so low-key, and classmate Lotus Sun is so concerned about him. It turns out that I was overthinking things. Classmate Wang Ling really lacks love. Master of Dopey. I never thought that under classmate Wang Ling's aloof exterior would be such a tenacious and indomitable heart. It really wasn't easy for him to get to this point after all these years. I should pay more attention to him in the future. Featherlin. It's time to find classmate Wang Ling a loving boyfriend. Lotus Sun cupped her chin in her hand as she considered whether she should launch a charity donation in the name of Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Raise money to buy classmate Wang Ling, who lived in the suburbs, a big pink magic sword full of love. Wang Ling, that's enough. Spirit swords made of peach wood might have been very popular 10 years ago, but they were now completely obsolete. As more and more powerful materials for forging swords emerged on the market, the peachwood spirit sword had completely fallen to the price of cabbages. At present, only a small number of manufacturers would still produce a certain amount of it every year and then sell it wholesale to educational institutions for the introduction of spiritual sword education in kindergartens, preschools, and primary schools. Thus, seeing Wang Ling show off his small wooden sword, Old Antique felt that classmate Wang Ling's childhood must have been very unhappy. Normal parents would treat their children's first spirit sword very seriously. This could be seen from Super Chun, Lotus Sun, and the others. In comparison, the Peachwood spirit sword was too cheap. No matter how hard it was, they should not let their children suffer. No matter how poor they were, they should not be poor in education. What era was this? Even malicious spirits had evolved to the ultimate level. Why would they still use a spirit sword made of peachwood? Even if he hung it at the head of the bed, it wouldn't be able to ward off evil. Looking at the photo projection in the air, Old Antique sighed in his heart. It looked like it was time for him to report this matter to Teacher Pan and give classmate Wang Ling an in-depth home visit. Wang Ling, Tuesday of the third week of school, 8 in the morning. Everyone appeared at the school gate as scheduled and took the bus to number 59 High School to participate in the 4-day Student Union Exchange program. The group of people packed light, and all the things they needed to bring were already in the pockets of their school uniforms. Wang Ling got into the car and sat down in the last row. When Dopey and Super Chin got into the car, they watched impatiently as Wang Ling sat in the last row. After exchanging glances, they sat on either side of Wang Ling like door gods. After Wang Ling had shown off the little wooden sword yesterday, Super Chun and the others had all felt that showing care for classmate Wang Ling should start with the small details. This terrified him from the bottom of his heart. His low-key high school life hadn't unfolded according to the plot he had imagined, which was far beyond Wang Ling's expectations. After all, the people in the bus with him now were all on his list of people to be wary of. Who knew what kind of ill-fated fate this was? Wang Ling felt that he might have offended the Tai Sui this year. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Lotus Sun and Feather Lin sitting hand in hand not far away. Even if he didn't read minds, Wang Ling knew that Feather Lin, this veteran Fujoshi, was most likely trying to make the three of them a couple again. In the end, all 5 of them had shrunk into the back of the bus, leaving Old Antique alone in the front seat with the bus driver. Fortunately, Old Antique didn't care about this. He just needed to ensure the safety of the students, and it didn't matter if he was a little lonely. In his pocket, there was a stock of snacks waiting for him to slowly enjoy. This was the first time he had been so closely surrounded by people. Wang Ling maintained his usual silence as he quietly listened to the discussions around him. Because he was naturally incompatible with electronic products, Wang Ling was able to read almost all the real-time information he could get. This was to ensure that he wouldn't be too out of touch with the times. Master of Dopey and Super Chun were chatting happily. Master of Dopey pushed up his glasses. Did you hear? Not long ago, an ancient tomb was discovered on a construction site. According to experts, it's very likely that this ancient tomb was a fake tomb set up by one of the 2 Almighties from ancient times. Almighties from ancient times. Hearing this, Wang Ling knew that they were definitely talking about Han Li and Wang Lin, the 2 old demons of the cultivation world. Before Huaxiao Nation had become a nation, these 2 had been influential figures. Even ancient texts had been recorded before the Great Battle Chi era, and they had belonged to the cultivation ancestors. But now, along with Wang Ling's glorious past, they were forever buried in the annals of history, and had become a hot topic in old antiques theory of history class. Among them, Han Li's cultivation theorem and Wang Lin's grading method had become advanced math test points that students loved and hated at the same time. There had always been rumors that Old Demon Han and Old Demon Wang were in fact still alive. That was because until now, all the ancient tombs found in Huaxiao Nation had been fake. And these fake tombs were most likely a smokescreen left behind by these two living fossils. But there was no basis for this theory, because according to historical records, these two almighties had indeed taken the last step toward immortality, but both had failed and fallen to the heavenly Tao. This matter seems to have blown up quite a bit. Super Chin nodded. Of course he had heard about it long ago. Of course it's blown up, because there are a lot of doubtful points in this matter. Master of Dopey said mysteriously, according to experts, this tomb belongs to Old Demon Wang. But what's very strange is that a fragment of the sky bottle used by Old Demon Han was actually found in Old Demon Wang's tomb. Do you know the origin of the sky bottle? According to historical records, this was Old Demon Han's personal treasure and can make spirit herbs mature rapidly in a short period of time. Then why did it appear in Old Demon Wang's fake tomb? Hearing their conversation, Lotus Sun couldn't help asking curiously. That's why I said it's very strange. Master of Dopey spread his hands. Now, Old Demon Han's fan family army Han says that this fake tomb actually belongs to Old Demon Han. But Old Demon Wang's fan family army isn't convinced and thinks that this fragment might have been forged by Old Demon Wang when he was alive to mislead the public. But it's just a fake tomb. What's there to fight about? Feather Lin couldn't understand at all. You don't understand? Master Dopey spread his hands in response. That's good. The battle between the salty and sweet tofu puddings has been going on for thousands of years. But isn't there still no conclusion? Just like Family Army Han and Family Army now. They clearly know that there's no conclusion, but they still want to fight it out for their idol's Weibo popularity. Even if it's just to make their presence known, it's not a loss. Chapter 29. Society was dangerous, and even Wang Ling believed that there were two groups that he absolutely couldn't provoke. That was the Han Army and the Wang Army. The fan groups of these two ancient almighty cultivators were even scarier than the fans of Huaxiao's A-listars. Each fan club had tens of millions of fans, and without exception, they were all cultivators. Furthermore, the presidents of these two fan clubs were rumored to be first-class experts in the cultivation world. All these years, Huaxiao Nation had been secretly suppressing the power of these two fan clubs. They had also informed all local education bureaus to strictly prohibit teachers and students from privately joining fan clubs. For the military, these were two factors that were difficult to control. Perhaps one day, it would threaten national security. But none of this had anything to do with Wang Ling. There's a saying that went like this: you can be naughty, but you're treated like a melon. As long as it didn't affect his low-key life, Wang Ling could turn a blind eye to it. Otherwise, he only needed to move a finger to make these tens of millions of people disappear. The bus traveled for a full hour, but Master of Dopey didn't have the slightest intention of stopping. They talked about everything from astronomy to geography. From the latest hot news, they slowly talked about national affairs. As they lamented the difficult lives of the people at the bottom of society, they also educated their companions on patriotism. Nan'an Nation's insistence on deploying the immortal sword defense system on the border had aroused strong protest from Huaxiao Nation. Commoners didn't talk about politics. Although Wang Ling was used to being idle, he still had some understanding of this major event. Huaxiao Nation had imposed various economic sanctions on Nan'an Nation, resulting in the closure of many of Nan'an's large supermarkets in Huaxiao and the removal of imported food from the shelves. Among the food products taken off the shelves, Wang Ling's favorite turkey-flavored crispy noodle snacks was produced in Nan'an Nation. But crispy noodle snacks were a small problem in the end. There was no foodie in front of the nation. It was just one flavor less, and Wong Ling could completely accept it. The domestic crispy noodle snacks might be less novel, but in the end, they were still classics. The bus sped along, and the roads were still a little congested during the morning rush hour. Finally, after 2 hours, Old Antique, who was sitting at the front and gnawing on a spicy stick, said, "Students, we've arrived. Everyone, get ready to get off." "Teacher, what time is it?" "It's 10:04. We'll go to number 59 high school to register. We'll attend the first exchange meet at 2 in the afternoon to confirm our schedule for the next few days," Old Antique answered. After they got off the bus, the old driver stepped on the accelerator and sped away. Today, the Central Supermarket's potato chips were half price. He didn't know if the old driver would be able to catch the last half-price bus back at this time. They had landed just across the road from number 59 high school's gate. "We're finally here." Everyone swept their eyes over number 59 high school's newly renovated campus, feeling a little envious. Although number 59 high school was currently still a secondary key high school in the city, its campus environment and teaching facilities were all up to the standards of a key high school in the city. As far as the eye could see, number 59 Middle School's main square was covered in lush greenery like an ancient forest deep in the mountains. If one's line of sight followed the tree-lined path at the school gate, one could see the 8-story teaching building hidden by layers of trees. Recalling the palm trees at number 60 high school's gate and the old school building, they instantly felt a little sad. "Damn, is this really number 59 high school?" Feather Lynn was shocked. "I remember when I passed by here the year before last, it was clearly even more run-down than number 60 high school. Did he strike it rich?" "He probably struck it rich the year before last," Superchin said with a frown. Superchin frowned and said, "The year before last, number 59 high school successfully produced 6 Golden Core students, which set a record in the last 200 years. So, as early as the year before last, they received an angel investment from a private hospital. Furthermore, he successfully applied to the Education Bureau in the same year and was nominated as a candidate for a key high school in the city." Old Antique nodded slightly. What he wanted to say had been said by Superchun. As a student, Superchun knew a lot of information, but that wasn't strange. Superchun had participated in many school sports competitions since he was a child, and often traveled from school to school, so he naturally had more information than ordinary students. Feather Lynn. "An angel investment from hospital? Why a hospital?" "And it's an andrology hospital. Have you heard of Nine Sons Men's Hospital? It was opened by the founder of the Nine Sons Classic." In the end, Master Dopey had to personally deal with this sort of gossip. As the saying goes, when one is flushed with success, the top scorer in the college entrance examination gets circumcised. Everyone, a hospital that was targeting college entrance examination graduates to advertise. There was really no one else like it. "I heard that with number 59 high school's graduation certificate, you can enjoy this hospital's circumcision service for free. I'm thinking if I can borrow a graduation certificate from here, should I ask 2 people to go with me?" Hirogwa asked, chin in hand. Wong Ling felt that this was a little too much information. Lotus Sun and Feather Lin's faces turned bright red. It was inevitable that they would feel a little embarrassed when they heard such a shameful topic. "Student Gua, if you can borrow a graduation certificate, please be sure to take me with you." Old Antique suddenly sighed. "It's been almost 600 years, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to find an opportunity to release my nature." Next to him, Wong Ling wanted to say something again, but stopped himself. He knew how fast Old Antique's hands were. Logically speaking, Wong Ling felt that Old Antique didn't need to go to the hospital at all. He could completely perform the surgery himself. Although they were very envious of number 59 high school's new environment, no one was truly jealous. Once Huagwa Water Curtain Group allocated funds, number 60 high school's new environment would definitely be much better than this. When Old Antique led the way to the school gate, they were immediately stopped by a school guard. The bright blue school uniform dazzled the school guard. "Who are you looking for?" After showing his ID, the guard bowed deeply to Old Antique. "So it's number 60 high school. The school leaders have already informed us." Please go to room 1001 on the first floor of the teaching building to register. Okay, thank you. Old Antique took back his ID with a smile, his trademark narrowed eyes once again appearing. In this way, the group entered the school gate without any hindrance. To be honest, in terms of school relations, number 59 high school and number 60 high school actually didn't have a very good relationship. The school guard's respectful and friendly attitude was a little beyond Old Antique's expectations. Of course, the attentive Old Antique had also noticed another problem, and that was when they would be visiting. Old Antique was sure that number 59 high school hadn't specifically announced it to the students. Otherwise, given student Lotus Sun's influence, this tree-lined path would already be packed with people. The school guard room usually had a device that blocked spiritual senses, but this kind of device was completely ineffective against Wang Ling. They hadn't gone far from the school gate when Wang Ling's spiritual senses directly penetrated it. The school guard who had been smiling earlier had already completely wiped his smile off his face as he dialed a number with a gloomy face. Yes, Director Xie, number 60 high school has arrived. 3 boys and 2 girls, and a parrot? The teacher in charge is a fatty. He looks stupid and doesn't seem to be a threat. I also got the news earlier. He's just a history teacher. I don't think he's very strong. A relatively cold voice rang out on the other end of the line. Chapter 30. Anyone who dug up the dark history of number 60 high school's director Sher and number 59 high school's director Xiao online would know that they were old enemies. They had all graduated from Cultivation Normal University, a first-tier cultivation school, second only to Ace University. It was affiliated with the National 211 Key University. After graduating from Normal University, the two of them had worked together at number 60 high school for a while. Later, Teacher Sher was elected as the head of teaching. Teacher Xie, on the other hand, was ostracized at school and had no choice but to transfer to number 59 high school. Number 59 high school had been developing rapidly in the last few years, and the newly appointed director Xie was on her way to becoming an official. It was impossible for him not to take revenge for being ostracized back then. Thus, the grudges between number 59 high school and number 60 high school over the years were mostly due to the rivalry between these two teaching directors. The friendship between women could be quickly established with a Chanel flying sword. However, once a war broke out and the two swords clashed, there would definitely be death. The relationship between the student councils of the two schools was actually quite discordant as well. Even the head of teaching was like this. The competition between the students, both in the open and in the dark, naturally inherited the demeanor of the school leaders. But Wang Ling had always felt that among the 3 ordinary high schools in Peiyuan District, number 60 high school's spirit and discipline had always been pretty good. Just as he arrived at the entrance of the teaching building, before he could even step inside, he saw a teenager about his age from a distance. The teenager was wearing an old-fashioned dark brown school uniform, and he was slowly strolling out of the teaching building, followed by 4 other youths for a total of 5 people. The leader of the 5 youths was Tang Jingze, the president of number 59 high school student union, with a calm expression on his face. He was also a veteran who mingled in the social circles of various universities. In particular, he knew the situation of Peiyuan District's 3 schools like the back of his hand. The person standing next to Tang Jingze was called Fang Huaqing, vice president of number 59 high school's student union. He was a pretty boy with a short stature. The 3 people behind them were number 59 high school's 3 Liang brothers, Liang Wei, Liang Zheng, and Liang Fei. Before attending the exchange meet, Old Antique had already done their homework in advance. Although this was the first time they had met, everyone at number 60 high already knew what was going on. Tang Jingze bowed slightly to Old Antique. This must be Teacher Wang, right? Teacher Wang and all the junior brothers and sisters, welcome to number 59 high school. For the next 4 days, I'll be taking care of everyone's daily life. Please forgive me if there's anything lacking. This warm greeting instantly put everyone at number 60 high on guard. Everyone knew about the relationship between number 59 high school and number 60 high school. to be so solicitous for no reason. There had to be a reason behind it. Furthermore, number 58 high school had come to number 59 high school with the same goal long before the student union exchange event between the two schools. But according to the information Old Antique had, the students of number 58 high school were completely wiped out in the various exchange tests. Tang Jingza's gaze swept over everyone with a slightly invasive look. Tang Jingza had already done his homework and knew everyone at number 60 high like the back of his hand. The eldest daughter of Huaguo Water Curtain Group, Lotus Sun, was probably the only person in the whole of number 60 high school who could participate in the exchange meet. Then, it was the leader of the team, the fat Sherlin, Wang Zukong, the top student, Feather Lin, sports committee member Super Chun, politics class representative Hero Gua, and, holy shit, wait. The last person, what the hell was his name again? Tang Jingza broke out in a cold sweat. His thoughts were actually blank, and he couldn't remember who on earth the young man with the crew cut standing at the very back of the group was. This feeling of not being in control made Tang Jingza feel uneasy. Had he miscalculated? No, he had definitely made ample preparations before coming here. But he couldn't remember the slightest bit of information about this young man with the crew cut in front of him. What on earth was going on? The truth was that Wang Ling's great shielding spell had played an important role. This spell was like a passive skill in a game. Ever since he had learned to activate it at the age of 5, he had never turned it off again. The specific effect was that when the spell was activated, any information about Wang Ling that he had obtained from any channel would be completely forgotten in the blink of an eye before they met face to face. As a senior who had been at school for 2 years, and who had been mingling in the school social circle since primary school, Tang Jingza just thought that he had stumbled and lost his memory. Very quickly, Tang Jingza clapped his hands with a face full of smiles, and someone behind him immediately served tea that had been prepared beforehand. Since everyone has come to my number 59 high school, you are our honored guests. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. I wonder if any of you juniors from number 60 high school are willing to be our representative and drink up this cup of tea as a symbol of friendship? Old Antique's eyelids instantly twitched when he saw the color of the tea. The brownish-green tea had a faint, unpleasant smell mixed with chemicals. If Old Antique had to find an accurate word to describe it, it would be like underwear that hadn't been washed for 300 days mixed with dried salted fish that had been exposed to the sun for 49 days and garnished with a bit of canned herring juice. As a veteran foodie who had stood tall on a battlefield and was number 60 high school's famous snack smuggler, he saw that even Old Antique looked defeated in the face of this cup of tea. Everyone else immediately had an idea. This tea was poisonous. Furthermore, it was definitely a trap. Seeing this scene, Tang Jingza smiled slightly. This tea is blended with vegetable and fruit juice of 200 times the concentration. It has the miraculous effect of strengthening the muscles and bones. We can't bear to give it to just anyone. Of course, the smell is indeed a little strange, but this is a tradition of our school and a testament to our friendship. Juniors from number 60 high school, don't you think you should set a brave example for your school? So it was vegetable and fruit juice. Everyone from number 60 high school was suddenly enlightened. This thing was a F*** king poison in the school. It had to be said that this thing also had something to do with Huaguo Water Curtain Group, because the granular powder used to make the vegetable and fruit juice had been personally developed by Huaguo Water Curtain Group. However, the vegetable and fruit juice that Huaguo Water Curtain Group sold on the market had been carefully calculated. Although Lotus Sun couldn't deny that it didn't taste very good, at least it wasn't to the extent that it was hard to swallow. The most important thing was that this thing really did have the effect that Tang Jingza had said. It could strengthen the muscles and bones. But the prerequisite was that he had to guarantee that he wouldn't vomit it out and that he wouldn't drink a single drop. Lotus Sun hadn't expected that this group of people would actually take her down a notch like this. They clearly didn't take her, this young miss, seriously at all. Generally speaking, vegetable and fruit juice of 10 times the concentration was already hard to swallow. 20 times the concentration could already be called hell. 200 times the concentration. This was completely going to kill someone. In the back, Fong Huaqing, Liang Wei, and the others couldn't help laughing inwardly. Back then, those idiots from number 58 high school who cared about face had all fought to drink it, but they had vomited until the entrance of the school building was a complete mess, making a fool of themselves. Even if it was hard to swallow, what could your number 60 high school do to deal with it? Just as the atmosphere was about to freeze, Tang Jingzi saw that youngster with the crew cut, whose name he couldn't remember, who had been standing silently at the back of the crowd, walk up to the front in 2 or 3 steps. Then, he picked up the cup of tea. Chapter 31. Under everyone's stupefied gazes, Wang Ling picked up the cup of tea and drank it down in a domineering manner. There really wasn't even a drop left. Not only did he not spit it out, he let out a long burp, which made Tang Jingzi and the others want to vomit. Don't get me wrong, Wang Ling had no intention of playing the hero, because he felt that it was a waste of time to waste like this. It was undoubtedly quite shameful to waste one's good time in a place like this. In contrast, Wang Ling would rather use this time to study. Of course, the main reason was that he felt very tired after sitting on the bus for so long. It only took him a few seconds to run from number 60 high school to number 59 high school. Thus, Wang Ling had never been used to taking public transport. "Classmate Wang, are you okay?" Old Antique had already suffered a fright after Wang Ling had taken out the little wooden sword last night. But Old Antique hadn't expected that the second scare in his life would actually come so swiftly and swiftly. Super Chun and Master Dopey's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and even Dopey was so scared that 2 white feathers fell off, 200 times the concentration of vegetable and fruit juice. This wasn't something a F*** king human could drink, right? I'm used to it. Wang Ling calmly wiped his mouth and said succinctly. He didn't think much of it. Wang Ling remembered that the body-tempering liquid he had concocted using the ancient method had tasted much more disgusting than vegetable and fruit juice. Recalling how people in the past had actually endured the pain of drinking such a disgusting thing in order to advance a little in their cultivation, a cup of vegetable and fruit juice with 200 times the concentration really wasn't much. Wang Ling even felt that it actually tasted a little sweet. Used to it. But Wang Ling's short 3-word reply set off an uncontrollable storm in the hearts of everyone present. Vegetable and fruit juice was very cheap on the market, and it could be said that it was a cultivation nutrient developed by Huagua Water Curtain Group for the people at the bottom of society. For poor people who weren't rich but had fervent hopes for their children, vegetable and fruit juice was like a reed in a quagmire of despair. As long as one member of the family successfully reached the foundation establishment stage, they would receive special supplies from the Huashu government. For these poor families, it would be a qualitative change. Lotus Sun had been to Wang Ling's house before. She knew that Wang Ling's home was in the urban-rural fringe, which happened to be on the border of Star City. But Lotus Sun had always felt that Wang Ling's family wasn't really poor, until she saw Wang Ling take out his little wooden sword, and today's magnificent feat of drinking fruit and vegetable juice as a second-generation rich kid with a conscience. Lotus Sun felt that it was very necessary for her to care about Wang Ling's life. What kind of boy was he? He could endure the taste of fruit and vegetable juice from a young age, rely on his own efforts to build his foundation step by step, and enter a high school in the city center from a remote suburb? The group from number 60 high school was completely shaken. Starting from this cup of fruit and vegetable juice, Lotus Sun and Featherland couldn't stop their tears from welling up in their eyes. Even Super Chun and Hirogua, these 2 rough men, were deeply moved. Wang Ling felt that if things continued to develop at this pace, the next top 10 people who touched the school would definitely be him. This cup of juice, which was claimed to be friendship, was definitely added by Tang Jingzi and his gang. After this, Lotus Sun and the others finally saw the true nature of this student exchange meet. Rather than calling it an exchange between the 2 schools, it was more like number 59 high school showing off to the world. Not only could they satisfy their vanity, they could also watch people from other schools make a fool of themselves. Fortunately, Classmate Wang Ling is here. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be able to pass the first hurdle. Lotus Sun sighed inwardly. This was a tough fight, and they had to take it no matter what. They represented the entire image of number 60 high school. Even if they didn't have to fight, they had to fight for their dignity. Glancing angrily at the dumbfounded Tang Jingze and the others, Featherlin said indignantly, "Our classmate Wang Ling also drank this cup of friendship. Can we go in now?" Actually, everyone at number 60 high was as clear as a mirror in their hearts. Given the relationship between number 59 high and number 60 high, what bullshit friendship could there be to speak of? This friendship boat had never set sail at all. So this person is called Wang Ling. Tang Jingze was silent for a while as he looked at the calm Wang Ling. He repeated this name repeatedly in his heart. He had to be more vigilant against this unexpected person in the next few rounds of the plan. In just a few short seconds, Tang Jingze had already thought about a lot of things, including the next few rounds of this special hospitality plan. After all, the vegetable and fruit juice was just one part of it. Distinguished guests of number 60 high school, you must be tired from the long journey. Please come with me. I'll register you right away. Tang Jingze was all smiles again as he led the people from number 60 high school in. Wang Ling was still at the back of the line. Just as he stepped onto the steps, he heard Tang Jingze start to show off the new spirit gathering array that no. 59 High School had set up. As you all know, our number 59 high school's teaching building was successfully renovated last year, thanks to the vigorous efforts of the new school board. New school board? Master of Dopey smiled slightly. Is it the director of the Department of Andrology? Ha ha ha! Hearing this, Lotus Sun and Featherlin couldn't hide their laughter at all. Tang Jingze and the others fell deathly silent at the sound of this demonic, barbell-like laughter. Damn it! There was something wrong with this plot. Shouldn't these people be envious, jealous, and hating them? Why the hell did it feel like they had been shot twice in the kneecaps by this bunch of people from number 60 high school? Classmate Gua, please pay attention to your image when you speak. Old Antique pretended to be calm as he cleared his throat, but he was actually very happy in his heart. Everyone had a time when they were young, and it was the best to watch youngsters quarrel. Actually, he preferred watching two girls pull at each other's hair as they rolled around on the ground. That was more exciting. Yes, teacher, I was wrong. As expected of Master of Dopey, he was famous for being thick-skinned at number 60 high school. If he said he was wrong, he would admit it, and he didn't look the least bit remorseful. There's nothing better than being able to correct a mistake. In the future, don't interrupt when others are talking, got it? Old Antique nodded, then looked at Tang Jingze. Oh, that's right. Where's classmate Tang just now? Please continue. Tang Jingze. Old Antique's words made Tang Jingze's kneecaps hurt again. It turned out that even the lead teacher hadn't taken what he had just said to heart. He had pretended to be pretentious, and even if he had to endure the humiliation, he had to continue. The corner of Tang Jingze's mouth twitched, and he forced himself not to flare up as he repeated what he had just said. As you all know, our number 59 high school's teaching building was successfully renovated last year under the vigorous efforts of the new school board. Now, the 8-story teaching building has a total of 8 rounds of spirit gathering arrays laid out layer by layer. After entering the teaching building, do you feel that the spirit chi around you is boundless, and that even the air is a lot fresher? Really? Super Chun did his best to gather his spirit energy and run it through his body, then frowned. Strange, why don't I feel anything? Tang Jingze thought it was just jealousy at first, and wanted to argue a little more, but in the end he saw Lotus Sun shake her head and say, there really isn't. It doesn't feel much different from the spirit chi outside. Fang Huaqing also elbowed Tang Jingze lightly. President, is there something wrong with the spirit gathering array? Something wrong? How is that possible? The spirit gathering array was maintained every day. How could there be a problem so easily? Is it not activated yet? Hurry up and check it out. Tang Jingze almost forgot himself as he roared at Liang Wei and the other two behind him. How could there be a problem at this critical juncture? He was only halfway through his pretentious act. A moment later, Liang Wei ran back, panting, reporting to President, "What on earth happened?" The teacher from the schoolwork department said that for some reason, just now, the core array flag of the spirit gathering array exploded. None of the 8 array flags were spared. When Tang Jingze heard the news, it was as if 10,000 alpacas were stampeding in his heart. He had actually been slapped in the face twice in a row by his own pretentious plan. At that moment, Tang Jingze felt that his knees really were in extraordinary pain. Hirogwa laughed so hard that his teeth almost fell off. "Ha ha! The core array flag can actually explode? This is the first time I've heard of it. It looks like the quality of your array flags isn't very good. Don't tell me they're made by Samsung." The most painful thing in life wasn't when one's knees hurt. It was when the pain was unbearable, when Master Dopey gave him one last stab. Crack. It was as if everyone at the scene could already hear the faint sound of Tang Jingze's knees breaking. Wang Ling stood innocently at the back of the crowd, gazing gloomily at number 59 High School's magnificent 8-story teaching building. He sighed deeply. It looked like the talisman seal on his arm had weakened considerably. In the past, his spirit energy would affect the magnetic field of the spirit gathering array, but it wouldn't go as far as to cause the core array flag to explode. Now that the power of the talisman seal was deteriorating, he was indeed becoming more and more out of control, of course. Wang Ling was also doing his utmost to restrain himself. But releasing spirit energy was like leaking a domineering aura, especially now that the talisman seal's power had weakened. Wang Ling himself felt very helpless. It was just a pity for that circumcised school director. Setting up 8 consecutive spirit gathering arrays also cost a lot of money. Chapter 32. Number 59 High School's dormitory was also newly built behind the teaching building. It was a 4-story building with 4-person dormitories. Each floor had a public toilet and 10 dormitories. It could accommodate up to 160 students. Tang Jingze walked at the very front as he led the number 60 high school group forward. It didn't matter that the spirit gathering array in the teaching building was broken. The new school building's spirit gathering array was also newly built. Furthermore, it was the same structure as the teaching building, with a 4-layer circular spirit gathering array. Each layer was stronger than the one before it. No matter what, this bunch of country bumpkins from number 60 high school had to see the combined power of the circular spirit gathering array. Pondering this in his heart, Tang Jingze stepped through the automatic door of the school building and started to swiftly circulate his spirit energy in a big circle. Very quickly, he heaved a sigh of relief. He could clearly sense the boundless spirit chi around him, and the spirit gathering array was currently operating normally. Very good. There shouldn't be any more problems now. Tang Jingze waved ecstatically at the number 60 high school group behind him and didn't bother to hide his flaunting attitude. At that moment, Wang Ling, who was right behind him, stepped through the door. At the same time, there was a muffled bang from inside the building. Then, number 59 high school's spirit gathering array. It exploded just like that. At that moment, Tang Jingze didn't know if he should say Mother ***. Tang Jingze returned to the student union office with the help of the Liang family's 3rd young master. President, no one had ever seen Tang Jingze so despondent. The same thing had happened to the number 58 high school group a few weeks ago. On the first day of registration, the 6 students from number 58 high school had been unable to take care of themselves because of Tang Jingze's little trick. But now, the situation was completely reversed. Tang Jingze pounded the table angrily, mainly out of anger. The school's spirit gathering array is new, and the senior who set it up back then said that it could last for around 10 years. Tell me, it's only been running for less than a year. How could it all blow up in one day? Fang Huaqing, Liang Wei, and the others all felt that this was a little strange. There's something wrong with this number 60 high school group. President, how about we just forget about it? Liang Wei suggested in a low voice. Forget it, Tang Jingze sneered. How could he just let it go like this? He had been slapped in the face 3 times today. Once in front of the school building, once in the school building, and once in the school dormitory. Tang Jingzi felt that he had never been so vexed in his life. From elementary school to middle school, he had always been the class captain, the president of the student council, and an influential figure who was active in and out of school social circles. They were just a bunch of country bumpkins. He always had a way to deal with them. Tang Jingzi comforted himself. Although the school building was newly built, number 59 high school's accommodation plan wouldn't really start until next year. Wang Ling's group of 6 were currently the only ones living in this massive 4-story school building. Lotus Sun and Feather Lin were arranged to stay in the room at the end of the corridor. Wang Ling lived next door with the other 3 people and the bird. This was the first time Wang Ling had spent the night with someone else under the same roof and in the same space, and it was going to be for 3 whole nights. Just thinking about it gave Wang Ling a terrible headache. In the past, he had always done his utmost to avoid this kind of situation in case something unexpected happened. Speaking of which, today's incident was indeed a little strange. Was it really just a coincidence? Chen Chao jumped onto the bed and asked while swinging his tan thighs on the edge of the bed. The beds in the dormitory were all made with a bed and a table. Teacher Wang, what do you think? Master of Dopey looked suspiciously at Old Antique next to him. It's not easy to explain. Old Antique also shook his head. Although this was the era of scientific cultivation, there were always some things that science couldn't explain. Like today's incident. Who would have thought that number 59 high school, which had only been renovated for less than a year, would actually blow up 12 spirit gathering arrays in one go? Furthermore, Old Antique didn't think that these spirit gathering arrays were shoddy construction at all, since Huaxiao Nation had been cracking down on counterfeiting in recent years. For example, the people of Chaoyang District, Songhai City, reported the latest limited edition flying swords developed by the internationally renowned brand Nike a while ago. They hadn't installed the air cushion shock absorber system in the hilt as advertised. Thus, the National Counterfeiting Office fined them a full 1 billion yuan as a warning to others. There were many companies that specifically set up spirit gathering arrays for schools. Compared with the limited edition flying swords, the overall cost of setting up a spirit gathering array was actually very small. But Old Antique didn't think that any company would be able to withstand such a huge fine. Who would dare offend the government at this critical juncture of cracking down on counterfeits and fighting counterfeits? Student Wang Ling, what do you think? Old Antique looked at Wang Ling and asked. Wang Ling hadn't expected Old Antique to actually push the problem onto him. Wang Ling had been feeling a little guilty to begin with. In this situation, if he didn't say anything, wouldn't that make him look unnatural? Thus, after calming himself down and carefully considering the matter, Wang Ling said what was probably the longest sentence of his life. It's probably a mysterious power from the East. Then, everyone fell into deep thought. At 1:30 on Tuesday in the 3rd week of the semester, Lotus Sun gently knocked on the door of the dormitory next door. She had specially come to inform them of the Student Union Exchange meet at 2 o'clock. As the lead teacher, Old Antique was mainly responsible for their safety as well as the important Spirit Sword Exchange meet. As for everything else, Lotus Sun, the class monitor, was in charge of handling it. It had to be said that Lotus Sun was very good at carrying out tasks. There absolutely wouldn't be any mistakes when it came to the procedure. Everyone was very reassured about this. Is everyone resting? Lotus Sun asked in a low voice. Outside the office, Old Antique didn't choose to doze off, unlike his usual lazy self. Instead, he was making a lot of plans for the final Spirit Sword Exchange meet. Old Antique pointed at the 3 teenagers with their eyes closed and made a shushing gesture. Tell me what's going on. The Student Union Exchange meet is in classroom 2002. It starts at 2 o'clock, Lotus Sun said softly. All right, Student Lotus Sun, I'll wake them up later. Old Antique nodded. Lotus Sun blinked and looked curiously at the big men's dormitory. The first bed they entered was Wang Ling's. At that moment, Wang Ling was lying on his back on the bed, sleeping peacefully with only one arm as a pillow. His long eyelashes, steady breathing, and slightly upturned lips, he seemed to be having a good dream. This was the first time Lotus Sun had seen Wang Ling asleep, which was completely different from his usual unsmiling appearance in class. Chapter 33. Not long after Lotus Sun left, Wang Ling woke up very quickly. Wang Ling swore that he had just wanted to close his eyes to rest and hadn't expected to actually fall asleep like this. What a blunder! But at the same time, Wang Ling was lost in deep thought. How long had it been since he had truly fallen asleep? After a rough calculation, it seemed that he had been in this state of standby since he was 5 or 6 years old. Given Wang Ling's current realm, of course he didn't need to sleep at all. He only needed to meditate for a while, and he would immediately be full of vitality. For Wang Ling, nothing was more familiar than the Wang family small villa. After all, it was where he had lived for 16 years. But even in that environment, Wang Ling didn't dare fall asleep so easily. Wang Ling admitted that he was a very vigilant person. But in this completely unfamiliar environment, why on earth had he fallen asleep? As his thoughts turned, Wang Ling couldn't help recalling a scientific report he had read before, the gist of which was, if you can quickly fall asleep in an unfamiliar environment, it proves that there's something in that environment that can bring warmth and safety. Now, Wang Ling was almost certain that this report was fake. What a joke. He had put these people on the list of people he had to be wary of. Rubbing his face hard, Wang Ling secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he hadn't slept for long this time, and hadn't fallen into a deep slumber, otherwise the consequences would have been really hard to predict, because Wang Ling knew that he had a habit of snoring, and would do so as soon as he fell into a deep sleep. If he was in a deep sleep, the power of his snoring would be no less than that of a Tomahawk cruise missile. This suddenly reminded Wang Ling of a children's song from before. The sun shines in the sky, the flowers smile at me, the birds say good morning. Good morning, why do you carry an explosive bag on your back? I'm going to school, the teacher doesn't know, pull the string, and I run boom. The school is gone. The main point of this children's song was the last line. Boom, the school is gone. For other people, this children's song might just be a joke. But for Wang Ling, it really wasn't a joke. At the afternoon student exchange meet, Old Antique took Wang Ling and the other 2 boys to the school building before leaving. But he didn't go far, because he was responsible for their safety. The student exchange, as the name suggested, was an activity between students. So it wasn't just Old Antique. None of the teachers had participated in the entire conference, and the students were purely allowed to interact and discuss things on their own. Friction would arise in the course of these pleasant exchanges, and sparks of wisdom would be created. Lotus Sun and Feather Lin had arrived at the scene early, and as soon as the 3 of them entered the classroom, they saw the familiar faces from that morning. They were Tang Jingze, Feng Huaqing, Liang Wei, and Liang Wei's 2 lackeys, Liang Zheng and Liang Fei, who also had dark expressions on their faces. After all, in less than half a day, he had blown up 12 spirit-gathering formations. No matter who it was, their expressions wouldn't be good. In fact, before the student exchange meeting, Tang Jingze had already been scolded by Dean Xie in her office for an entire hour. He had just been released from the office, and now he had to come here to preside over the meeting. Wang Ling felt that it was really a little difficult for him. In the 200-seat multimedia classroom, Tang Jingze sat on the podium. Next to him was Vice President Feng Huaqing's seat. The VIP seats in the first row of the classroom were specially reserved for number 60 high school. From the second row onwards, number 59 high school students had come to attend the conference on their own initiative. The conference hadn't officially started yet, and the number 60 high school group sat quietly in their seats, waiting. After that, people continued to enter the classroom one after another, and it didn't stop until the entire classroom was full. Furthermore, the overall number of people continued to climb at a speed visible to the naked. Wang Ling saw a lot of people carrying small stools directly in to occupy the aisles. There were also people who were sitting in the air with the help of flying carpet magic artifacts. Looking at double the number of people, Tang Jingze's face darkened even more, and he turned his head to look at Feng Huaqing next to him. I told Yang Wei to find extras. Not so many. We're having a conference, not a concert. We really didn't hire extras this time. They came voluntarily, Fong Huaqing said in a low voice, feeling very wronged. Voluntarily? For what? Tang Jingzi thought it was inconceivable. When the people from number 58 high school had come a few weeks ago, there hadn't even been a single bird feather. It had been so desolate that even Director Xie couldn't stand it anymore, and had called in some students from several classes to act as extras. Fong Huaqing sighed deeply and helplessly pointed at Lotus Sun sitting in the first row. What else could it be for? Of course it was to see Lotus Sun, the young miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group and the nation's school belle. Just these titles alone had already spread like wildfire in number 59 high school before Lotus Sun had even arrived at the school. That was, the school hadn't announced the specific time of number 60 high school's visit. Otherwise, Fong Huaqing felt that Tang Jingzi probably wouldn't even have had the chance to hand over the fruit juice. So, after someone received confirmation that number 60 high school had arrived, almost all the boys from grade 1 to grade 3 in know. 59 high school rioted. And so, the scene in front of them now. Classmate Lotus Sun, I want to bear your children. Classmate Lotus Sun, I want to sing a song for you. Alone, I drink until I'm drunk. Drunk until that beauty becomes a pair. My two eyes follow each other alone, only to return together with Lotus Sun. Lotus Sun, F***K. Tang Jingzi clenched his teeth and said, drag this guy out of here. Fong Huaqing, Wang Ling. Similarly, Wang Ling, Super Chun, and the others hadn't expected her to be so influential outside the school. At number 60 high school, Lotus Sun was also a towering figure who stood at the top of the school wreath. Wherever Lotus Sun passed, there was bound to be a riot. Master of Dopey even gave this phenomenon a name, Lotus Sun Domain. But he also realized that the domain effect didn't work on everyone. However, the effect on the passers-by was quite impressive. As expected of student Lotus Sun, Lotus Sun's domain has shown great power. It's such a great honor. As classmates, Super Chun, Feather Lin, and Master Dopey were all sincerely proud. Everyone, please be quiet. The scene was noisy. Tang Jingzi couldn't stand it anymore and couldn't help but shout into the microphone. His voice was very loud, coupled with the professional Hermes microphone in his hand. It was enough to reach every corner of the 200-person classroom. The situation was still out of control. Almost every boy in number 59 high school was immersed in the heated discussion centered on Lotus Sun and couldn't stop at all. Everyone, please be quiet. Tang Jingzi enunciated each word, his face already as black as a pickled cucumber. This time, it still didn't have much of an effect. Not only did the noise in the classroom weaken, it actually rose a few notches. Tang Jingzi, mother *****. Everyone, please be quiet. Tang Jingzi spoke for the third time, and there was a hint of warning in his voice. This time, under the influence of the pressure exerted by the president of the student union, the noise in the classroom was indeed a little lower. However, after a few tenths of a second, the noise broke through the limit of decibels again and reached a new peak. Tang Jingzi, I bought a watch last year. Everyone, I'm begging you, please be quiet. This was already the fourth time, a total of 4 calls to stop. Wang Ling could tell from his classmate Tang Jingzi's heart-wrenching and despairing cries. This person was most likely crazy. Next to him, Super Chun shook his head. Tragic. Too tragic. Hirogwa couldn't help sighing. The country has fallen. The people are scattered. The country is no more. The dignity of the president of the student union is practically non-existent. How sad is this? Feather Lin said indifferently. Do you know what it means to lose your mind? This is it. Chapter 34. According to the usual practice at number 59 high school's student exchange meet, after Tang Jingzi's speech, the guests from other schools had to send representatives to conclude the meeting. In fact, no one had heard what Tang Jingzi had said at all, because in less than an hour, this exchange meet had gone out of control for a full 50 minutes. There were only 5 minutes left for Tang Jingze to speak. Furthermore, it wasn't just silence in these 5 minutes. There was still the constant buzzing of voices in Tang Jingze's ears like flies. Normally, Tang Jingze would have flown into a rage long ago. But now, especially with people from other schools here, Tang Jingze had no choice but to swallow his anger. This was to ensure that he had the demeanor of the president of the student union. There were only 5 minutes left until the end of the meeting. Tang Jingze looked at his watch. He hadn't even finished 1/30th of his carefully prepared speech. He gritted his teeth and looked at Lotus Sunday. Now, let us invite number 60 high school's representative, student Lotus Sun, to speak. Thunderous applause filled the venue. Knowing that it was time for Lotus Sun to speak, the hot-blooded boys of number 59 high school quickly quieted down after a round of polite applause. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Tang Jingze was so angry that he almost spat out blood. It had taken him a full 50 minutes to control the situation, but it was actually no match for the name Lotus Sun. Damn it! Tang Jingze got up, moved to a seat on the side, and quickly pressed the broadcast button. Lotus Sun's voice will be broadcast to every corner of the school. If Lotus Sun was at a loss for words, someone might record it and turn it into a topic of conversation over tea and dinner. There were only 5 minutes left. Let's see what you can pull out. Lotus Sun walked calmly to the front of the stage and tucked back her long hair. Even from a distance, Wang Ling could smell her sweet fragrance. She bowed slightly to the students in the audience with great confidence. Then, she gracefully sat down in the seat that Tang Jingze had vacated, adjusted her tone, and said lightly, "Hello, everyone. I'm the vice president of number 60 high school student union, as well as the class monitor of grade 1, class 3, Lotus Sunday." This voice was completely different from Lotus Sun's usual tone. It was clear that she had practiced it. Her soft and sweet voice was mixed with a faint broadcasting accent. Her lips and teeth moved, and every frown and smile. It was just an introduction, but her voice actually had a soothing and quiet feeling. It wasn't just the students of number 59 high school. Even Wang Ling and the others were slightly startled. I didn't expect classmate Lotus Sun to have such a nice voice when she's serious. As expected of a national campus belle, she's practically on par with voice actresses. Below the stage, the students of number 59 high school whispered to each other. Lotus Sun smiled slightly and continued, "It's a great honor for our number 60 high school delegation to be invited to participate in the student exchange meet at number 59 high school this time. In the last 50 minutes, as the president of number 59 high school students, student Tang Jingze has set a very good example." The corners of Tang Jingze and Fang Huaqing's mouths twitched involuntarily. This was 2F** King ridiculous. Super Chun, Hero Gua, and Feather Lin couldn't help covering their mouths and snickering. Wang Ling did his best to maintain his poker face, even though he had to admit that Lotus Sun's voice was indeed very pleasant when she was serious. Lotus Sun took her time to speak. The representatives of both sides had a cordial and friendly conversation at the meeting. We exchanged views. We improved our understanding of each other. The discussion was beneficial. We maintain number 60 high school's attitude. Similarly, we respect number 59 high school's opinion and commend student Tang Jingze for his contribution to the maintenance of the school's environment. Outside the school building, Old Antique couldn't help snickering when he heard Lotus Sun's voice over the school broadcast, and his eyes narrowed into slits. When all was said and done, she was the successor cultivated by Huaguo Water Curtain Group, speaking ironic words with a straight face and ruthlessly criticizing number 59 high school without a single word was really brilliant. When it came to broadcasting, Lotus Sun had really practiced it. This was a compulsory course for Huaguo Water Curtain Group's family business management. At a very young age, Lotus Sun had received this kind of business management education. When it came to broadcasting skills, Lotus Sun had long since obtained a state-level language certificate in Huaxiao Nation. Not only was her voice sweet and balanced, she was also very adaptable. Tang Jingze's attempt to make things difficult for Lotus Sun in this kind of place clearly paled in comparison. Every formidable broadcaster had a stopwatch in their hearts that could accurately calculate the time to increase or decrease their speaking speed. Of course, it was the same for Lotus Sunday, estimating that there were less than 30 seconds left. Lotus Sun smiled slightly and swiftly moved on to the closing stage. At the same time, we express our deep regret for number 59 High School's 12 spirit gathering arrays that were damaged in one day. I hope that in the future, our two schools can interact more and deepen our friendship and make greater contributions to the harmonious development of our students. Ding-ling-ling. The bell rang, and it just so happened to be the end of the third afternoon class. It was exactly 5 minutes, not a minute more, not a minute less. Thank you, everyone. Lotus Sun heaved a long sigh of relief, straightened her back, and bowed again. Every movement was flawless. It was impossible to pick out any flaws at all. Then, Tang Jingze heard a roar of applause. Clap, 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 clap. Even the teachers who were listening to the broadcast in their offices couldn't help clapping. Although they didn't understand what on earth had happened in the venue, everyone who heard Lotus Sun's speech felt that this exchange conference had been a great success. Almost all the boys in the venue stood up and applauded and cheered for Lotus Sunday. I don't know what classmate Lotus Sun is talking about, but it's awesome. F***CK. In comparison, our guild leader is nothing but a rune. Goddess Lotus Sun's voice is so beautiful. Why do they have to leave so much time for Tang Jingze? It was a waste of life. I strongly request that the goddess come to our number 59 high school for another meeting. This was the power of Lotus Sun's domain. Once the domain was activated, it could affect 95% of the people within its range. Although not everyone was convinced by Lotus Sun's words. But Wang Ling felt that in some sense, this ability that swallowed both men and women could even be weighted with realms, which was really too awesome. On the other side, with Lotus Sun at the center, the whole venue was clear and boundless. On the other side, dark clouds gathered above Tang Jingze and the others' heads. Wang Ling just felt that his face was so black that it was unsightly to the extreme. It was like rotten pig liver that had been stepped on by a pair of boots rolling in muddy water. This was clearly his own school, and as the president of the student union, he had actually allowed someone from another school to steal the limelight on his own turf. Tang Jingze gnashed his teeth hatefully. No matter what, he was going to make this bunch of number 60 high people pay back double for the face he had lost today. After all, this was just the first day. There were still 3 whole days left. Chapter 35. It was already dusk, and Tang Jingze was writing a report in the student union office with a bitter and hateful expression, as well as a reflection on gross negligence on the first day of the exchange meeting with number 60 high school. The 3,000-word exchange report and 5,000-word reflection on gross negligence couldn't be typed and had to be written by hand. He wasn't allowed to go home until he finished it. F***K. Ever since he was a child, he had never been detained by a teacher. Tang Jingze was so angry that he broke the fountain pen in his hand, and ink splattered all over Fang Huaqing's face. Fang Huaqing took out a wet napkin and wiped his face, revealing a helpless expression. Boss, this is already the 32nd fountain pen. There's no need to make life difficult for the fountain pen. The fountain pen is the school's public property. They are also included in the regulations governing school property and public facilities. This bunch of people from number 60 high school is really strange. Faced with Tang Jingze's roar, Fang Huaqing covered his face with a headache. According to the school work department's response, in addition to the 12 spirit gathering arrays that had exploded, the rest of the school's public facilities had also been damaged to varying degrees. As small as the newly repaired broadcast equipment, as large as the holographic projectors in the computer room, although they weren't as thoroughly damaged as the spirit gathering arrays, all of them had black screens for unknown reasons and couldn't be turned on. In the short one day that number 60 high school had visited, number 59 high school had suffered heavy losses. 40% of the school's public facilities alone had already been damaged. When he had first seen the damage report, Tang Jingze had taken a deep breath. This wasn't a F***King exchange meeting, but a demolition party. He even wondered if this bunch of people from number 60 high school had grown up in a demolition office. On the side, Liang Wei frowned and said, I heard that they seem to be going to Student Street later. Should we get someone to take revenge on them? Revenge? With what? Tang Jingze rolled his eyes. It would be easy to deal with Lotus Sun in school, but it was already after school. Tang Jingze realized that he had no way to fight back. As the young miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group, she was protected by bodyguards who followed her around in secret. In particular, after the Xiao family compound incident and the Shadow Stream assassination attempt, the bodyguard lineup had probably been reorganized and upgraded. It didn't take a genius to know that the secret guards following Lotus Sun were all like Jinshan poison tyrants who couldn't be gotten rid of. Even a mosquito wouldn't be able to get close. This is a tough bone to chew, but we don't need to target Lotus Sun alone. Liang Wei thought for a moment and said, according to the information we gathered previously, combining the information on the others, the remaining Super Chun was actually also a second-generation rich kid. Hero Guo's family ran a pet shop, but it seemed that he also had a political background. Feather Lin seemed to be very close to Lotus Sun and wasn't easy to deal with. All that's left is... Hearing this, Tang Jingze gritted his teeth. Only that pretty boy who drinks fruit juice is left. This fruit and vegetable juice drinker definitely doesn't have any background. He lives in the suburbs and seems to be very poor. He only brought a wooden sword with him to the spiritual sword exchange meet. That's him. Tang Jingze slammed the table. He was the only pushover among the 5 of them. Even an idiot wouldn't know that he was looking for a pushover. He couldn't possibly go and find a durian, right? At the same time, he couldn't help sneezing. It was free time in the evening. After having dinner in the canteen, the number 60 high school students planned to go for a stroll on the Student Street near number 59 high school. Because the school building hadn't officially opened yet, the caretaker gave the access card to Lotus Sun before he got off work and went home to nurse the baby. Wang Ling had wanted to refuse at first, but just as he was about to do so, his eyelids started to twitch violently again. It wasn't until he completely gave up on the idea of refusing to go shopping that he calmed down. All right, he couldn't run away from going shopping. When he had difficulty choosing, Wang Ling often judged whether he had made the right choice by whether or not his eyelids twitched. But this was also risky, because the eyelid twitch warning passive skill could only make judgments based on the current choice. It couldn't predict what would happen while they were shopping. Wang Ling wouldn't be able to predict in advance if something unexpected happened while they were shopping. Old Antique was a lazy person and didn't want to join in on the fun. After seeing everyone off at the school gate, he gave each of them a spirit talisman. Students, this is a soul-summoning talisman. If there's any danger, you can use it to summon me at any time. Student Lotus Sun will lead the team, and try not to split up. Come back early after you're done shopping. All right. Thank you, Teacher Wang. We're just taking a walk. We'll be back soon. They accepted the spirit talismans and nodded in unison. Old Antique nodded and didn't say anything else. Less than a dozen meters away, Old Antique, who had already turned his back on them, tilted his head slightly and said telepathically, "Oh, that's right. I heard that there's a gang on Student Street that specializes in Pengxi. Everyone should pay attention." A gang that specializes in Pengxi? Everyone stared blankly. No matter how they heard it, Wang Ling felt that this sounded like a flag. Sure enough, not long after Old Antique said this, Wang Ling's eyelids started to twitch in a very cooperative manner. Disaster level, 2 stars. It was hard to be a human being, but it was even harder to be a low-key person. Wang Ling had never wanted to stand out or be a hero. For someone like him, who had faced all kinds of challenges and disasters, it wasn't easy to finish the rest of his studies in a down-to-earth manner. Number 59 High School was pretty close to Student Street. It would take a group of foundation establishment students 20 minutes on foot. Moreover, in order to avoid encountering malicious scammers, no one even dared to ride the ferry bicycle on the roadside. As they walked down the street, Hero Guo suddenly said, Actually, I've heard a little about the background of this Punxi gang. Hearing this, Wang Ling silently pursed his lips, his expression cold. Is there anything in this world that you, master of Dopey, don't know? The members of the Punxi gang are mostly unemployed old men and women in their 70s or 80s. Ever since the country strictly prohibited people from taking up space in public squares to perform square dancing, the public square has become more and more popular. More and more old men and women are encouraged by criminals to join gangs. I still remember when the Punxi gang was established, the various cultivation police stations didn't pay much attention to it. Moreover, they're a bunch of old men and old women. Most of them are looking for excitement. Looking for excitement? Everyone was surprised when they heard this. These days, there were a lot of naughty kids who like to play extreme sports and seek death in fancy ways. He did not expect that these old men and women who should have been living like princes in nursing homes and thinking of romantic relationships every day would join the thrill-seeking queue. The naughty brat of the past, the old man of the present. After thinking about it carefully, Wang Ling felt that there was nothing wrong with this. Hero Guis said, actually, they don't care about money at all. If they can blackmail them, they do. If they can't, they obediently return the money. At most, they'll be educated in the detention center and then released. It's just in the last 2 years, the Punxi gang has developed at an outrageous speed. It's almost on par with the Han and Wang family armies. The Punxi gang branch on this student street seems to have only recently expanded. Sure enough, it was all because of square dancing. At this point, they had already reached the end of the street. Colorful street lights illuminated the bustling student street in front of them. There were food stalls, stationery stores, and even a video game city to provide additional recreational activities for students. On Student Street, the food stalls were very cheap, and you didn't have to spend much money to eat your fill. Furthermore, as long as you showed your student ID, you could enjoy a half-price discount for more than 90% of recreational activities. There were student streets near all 3 schools in Peiyuan District, but the one near number 59 High School was the largest. This is simply heaven. Super Chun could no longer contain his excitement. Previously, he had taken a fancy to a hover shoe online. It was only available in limited quantities in the student street area. Super Chun felt that he might be able to find a style he liked here. Lotus Sun simply wanted to take a walk to maintain her figure. Featherlin was more concerned about whether there will be a new volume of Fujoshi's daily life in high school. Looking at the main road calmly, Master of Dopey patted his chest confidently. Don't worry, everyone. As long as we don't use public transport, there won't be any problems. Wang Ling was a little flustered. What kind of strange flag was this? Chapter 36. After receiving Liang Wei's assignment, the old lady of the Punxi gang had been crouching behind the haystack for a long time. The moment the people from number 60 high school approached, she immediately locked onto Wang Ling amidst the army. She was just an ordinary old lady without any realm. Because of her sagging skin and old age, her thick eyelids were completely wrinkled and drooped to cover most of her eyes. However, this obstruction of sight wasn't enough to stop the old lady from scamming Wang Ling. She was the client's designated target, and the experienced old Madame Dong perfectly displayed her expertise in scamming over many years. As one of the 4 great elders of the Peiyuan district branch of the Punxi gang, old Madame Dong didn't have any realm. But to be able to support herself to this point after so many years, she had gradually become one of the great elders acknowledged by the handsome old men and beautiful old ladies in the gang. There had to be something about her that made her outstanding. First, old Madame Dong had amazing eyesight. She was over 70 years old, but her eyesight was as precise as an eagle's. This was an ability that ordinary old men and women with presbyopia were in awe of. She could quickly lock onto the client's designated scammer target from the crowd and accurately carry out her revenge campaign. Second, old Madame Dong had actually been a top student when she was young, of course. She didn't think it was anything to brag about. But it was precisely because of this that old Madame Dong's status as an elder had been consolidated. The moment Wang Ling appeared in her line of sight, old Madame Dong immediately estimated the speed and distance between them. She estimated that there was a distance of 20 meters between them. Wang Ling was now strolling forward at a speed of 6 meters per second. Then, as long as she dashed out from behind a tree at a speed of 4 meters per second. And so, 2 seconds later, everyone saw an old lady stumble up to Wang Ling, throw away her walking stick with a clatter, and grab Wang Ling's trouser leg. Her whole body twitched, and her expression was one of extreme pain. Wang Ling never thought that he would actually run into a scammer. When he had entered the gate between worlds to save old Li and the others, all the demon beasts that had encountered him had been turned into a pile of dregs by the backlash. It was just that the talisman seal on his arm was about to expire, which limited a lot of his strength. In addition, the old lady herself didn't have much strength. Otherwise, if the talisman seal had really expired in 2 days, Wang Ling thought that this old lady would probably have instantly turned into a pile of fine powder. Of course, he wasn't thinking of helping the old lady up. He had never been able to control the strength of his hands. Moreover, this old lady did not have any cultivation. If she was not careful, it would not be good for her to break her arm. "Granny, are you okay?" Lotus Sun crouched down and asked softly. Although everyone in number 60 high clearly knew in their hearts that this old lady was deliberately trying to blackmail them. The norm in this civilized society had always been that the weaker party was in the right. It was now the spirit energy information era, and quality education had long been popularized among cultivators. Before this era, who would dare to cheat under the feet of cultivators? It would be a miracle if he didn't get chopped into two. The old lady's acting was very realistic. She fell to the ground and twitched crazily. She was stunned for a long time, as if she was having an epileptic seizure. It wasn't until Lotus Sun and Featherlin had repeated the greeting no less than 10 times that the old lady turned over shakily and pointed weakly at Wang Ling, gasping for breath. You. Hirogua and Superchun were startled, their faces full of question marks. These days, the acting skills of faking an accident were really good, but it seemed they weren't very professional. In the past, those old men and women who had tried to blackmail Wang Ling had used all their strength to crawl under the wheels of their cars. But now, forget a car, they didn't even have a bicycle with 2 wheels, and yet she was actually accusing Wang Ling of blackmail in the dark and windy night under the bright moonlight. Hirogwa pursed his lips. "Granny, you have to be reasonable. We didn't use any means of transportation. How can you say that my classmate is blackmailing you?" If this blackmailer had just been an ordinary old man or woman, they might have been scared out of their wits by Hirogwa's aggressive questioning. But as an elder of the Peiyuan district branch of the Punxi gang, Madame Dong was in the end Madame Dong. Even when she was blackmailing someone, she had to do it differently to reflect the characteristics of an elder of the Punxi gang. From Madame Dong's calm and composed eyes, everyone in number 60 high school seemed to already understand. It was obvious that this old lady was already a veteran of many battles. In the face of Hirogwa's powerful questioning, Madame Dong sat paralyzed on the ground and slowly extended an index finger to point at Wang Ling. She looked very weak as she said, It's him. He violated me with coercion." Coercion. Everyone was instantly enlightened. F***K. This was a new blackmail routine. Hirogwa dropped his forehead deeply into his hand. Sure enough, the older, the wiser. No one had thought that someone could blackmail them in this way. "How about we call the police?" Featherlin was completely helpless. "Call the police?" Madame Dong snorted. "Do you know how many people there are in our Punxi gang? If you can get this classmate to obediently pay up, I'll let this matter go." "Then how much do you want?" Lotus Sun sighed. Anything that could be solved with money wasn't a problem for her at all. The old lady held out her hand. "I don't want much. Just pay me 5 million first." 5 million? Although this wasn't a lot for Lotus Sun, it wasn't something that she could take out right away. Lotus Sun could already tell that this old lady wasn't just blackmailing them, but was purely looking for trouble. "Why don't you just rob someone?" Superchin couldn't take it anymore. It was only after he said it that he realized what he had said was wrong. This old lady was actually robbing someone, and the kind that would swallow someone whole without spitting out the bones. Before the little friends could recover from their shock, the old lady pointed at Wang Ling and said, "Also, I only want this classmate to pay up. I don't want any compensation from the rest of the students. We blackmail people with professionalism." Featherlin felt that her 3 views had been refreshed. Nowadays, even blackmail people had started to pay attention to professionalism. This great Qing was going to die. Let's call the police and put this old lady in jail while we're at it. Hirogwa sighed helplessly. You want to put me in jail? You got guts. The old lady smiled mockingly. Why don't you give me a reason first? Hirogwa rolled his eyes. You indiscriminately grabbed my classmate's trousers. As the saying goes, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Although you're already old, you're still a woman, right? Does this count as child molestation? If this goes to a cultivation court, it's a serious crime. Wang Ling, the corners of Madame Dong's mouth twitched violently. Child molestation? Is your child 8 meters tall? Isn't this a giant baby? Obviously, Madame Dong didn't buy it. Even if you put me in the police station, I'll be able to come out in 2 days. But you have to be careful. My Punxi gang's territory is everywhere in the country. If this classmate pays up, I won't pursue the matter. But if she can't, then our gang's head elder will personally collect the debt. You dare threaten us? Lotus Sun glared at Madame Dong fiercely. This was the first time she had met someone who was so unreasonable. Do you know that I am? Lotus Sun wanted to say, do you know who I am? But before she could finish speaking, Wang Ling slowly took 2 steps forward and stood in front of her. Because at that moment, Wang Ling had already read Madame Dong's memories clearly. Since Liang Wei and the others had specially hired her to target him, Wang Ling naturally didn't want to implicate other people. Chapter 37. Ruffians and scoundrels in society always liked to pretend to be weak in order to win sympathy and reap benefits. It was clear that Madame Dong was such a person. There were many ways to deal with Madame Dong. Given Wang Ling's current realm, he could send the old lady up into the atmosphere in the blink of an eye, through outer space, and then directly into the Milky Way, so that she could live side by side with the sun for the rest of her life. Or an even simpler method was to directly open the heavenly eye and summon the inner flames of a star and scatter the ashes on the spot. But Wang Ling didn't want to be nosy, except for those shadow stream killers who regarded human life as dirt. Wang Ling had never personally killed anyone. Growing up, Father and Mother Wang had taught him that students should act like students, not think about standing out, and be down to earth in their studies. The most important thing was to abide by the core values of cultivation. This was the spirit energy information era, and in the scientific cultivation era, killing people wouldn't solve any problems. In the end, Madame Dong waved her sleeves and left with a suitcase in her arms, satisfied and content. I never thought that young people nowadays would be so generous. Madame Dong sighed in her heart and was wild with joy. A whole 5 million. Even if she bumped into porcelain on this street for more than 10 years, she wouldn't have gained as much in one night. Wang Ling watched Madame Dong leave with an indifferent expression on his face. The Punxi gang might seem difficult to deal with, but in the end, they still couldn't beat his great illusion spell. Madame Dong thought that she was holding a suitcase full of cash, but in fact it was nothing more than a clumsy, broken stone. Keep a low profile. Handle it carefully. Since this was a problem that could be solved with a divine power, Wang Ling's principle had always been to avoid violence if he could. Otherwise, if they really fought, the city would collapse, and if worse came to worst, the earth would be destroyed. This wasn't what Wang Ling wanted to see. This time, Wang Ling used 2 divine powers in total. The first was the Great Illusion spell on Madame Dong. The second divine ability was used on the stone that Madame Dong was holding. This spell was called the Great Truth Spell and had an extremely powerful brainwashing effect. Once Madame Dong brought the stone back to the Punxi gang, the core cultivation values that Wang Ling had carved into the stone would immediately activate. Prosperity, democracy, civilization, harmony, freedom, equality, justice, rule of law, patriotism, dedication, integrity, friendliness. At that time, all the scammers would be purified by the 24 mantras. Watching Madame Dong's back disappear at the end of the road, Wang Ling couldn't help sighing in his heart. It really wasn't King easy for him for all these people. Why did the old lady leave with a rock in her arms? This scene was a little confusing to the little companions. Maybe it's because of the ban on square dancing, coupled with the fact that his children are unfilial and his unhappy life in his later years. He was mentally stimulated, Feather Lin analyzed seriously. Lotus Sun also shook her head. If the spiritual world of the elderly is rich enough, who would deliberately try to cheat in order to find excitement? Therefore, after a heated discussion, everyone came to a conclusion. In the end, it was all the system's fault. It was all the world's fault. Wednesday of the third week of school, 8 in the morning. Liang Wei returned to the student union office with a swollen face because he had been beaten up by the old men and women of the Pingxi gang. The lumps on his head were like several small Wangzai steam buns stacked on top of each other. Even Tang Jingze was stupefied for a good while when he saw it. "Student, who are you looking for?" Liang Wei. Fang Huaqing pushed up his glasses. Although Liang Wei looked miserable at the moment and had a pile of Wangzai steam buns of various sizes on his head, Fang Huaqing could still see through the appearance and recognize Liang Wei from his iconic big lips. "What happened to you?" Liang Wei covered his face and wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He wailed in grief and indignation. "I was beaten up. What on earth happened?" Tang Jingze asked. Liang Wei took out a local morning newspaper and slapped it on the table. Then, Tang Jingze saw the eye-catching and bolded headline on the densely packed newspaper. Today's front-page news: the Peiyuan District Pengxi gang revolted last night. The old men and women turned themselves into the police one after another and sang praises of the core cultivation values. The corner of Tang Jingze's mouth twitched. No one knew what on earth had gotten into this bunch of old men and women. Under old Madame Dong's leadership, they had successfully instigated a rebellion overnight. Turning themselves in under old Madame Dong's leadership, the entire Peiyuan District Pengxi gang branch threatened to break away from the main Pengxi gang and change its name to the General Administration of Harmony. At the thought of what had happened last night, even a grown man like Liang Wei couldn't help his eyes turning red with grievance. As the employer, when Liang Wei had hired old Madame Dong yesterday, he had already arranged a meeting place for this morning. He had planned to personally check on the results. But what Liang Wei had never expected was that halfway there, old Madame Dong would lead a group of muscular old men and surround him in a small corner. By now, old Madame Dong's temperament was completely different from last night. She wore a red ribbon with the word harmony written on her arm. She glared at Liang Wei in a stern voice and muttered the 24 mantras. Liang Wei already couldn't remember what old Madame Dong had said at the time. After old Madame Dong finished reciting the 24 mantras, she took out a red book and began to read it aloud. In view of the fact that student Liang Wei maliciously hired a Pengxi gang and disturbed public order, I hereby announce the verdict of his trial. Then, with a wave of her hand, old Madame Dong bluntly declared him guilty, crime of anti-cultivation harmony. Right after that, several muscular old men came over. Although old Madame Dong was an ordinary person, that didn't mean that there were no cultivators in the Pengxi gang. If it had been just old Madame Dong alone, Liang Wei would have been able to deal with her. Unfortunately, the 8 old men surrounding him were all at the foundation establishment stage. And then, there was no and then. Liang Wei didn't even get to call out Yalai Dai before the 8 old men ruthlessly bullied him in turn, and he returned to school with a bloody nose and a swollen face. Tang Jingze, Fang Huaqing. Now, Tang Jingze and Fang Huaqing really felt like they had seen a ghost. Since the arrival of that bunch of people from number 60 high school yesterday, there had been no end of trouble. Now, Even this bunch of stubborn old men and women from the Punxi gang had F***King set things right in one night. What the F***K was there left to play? Tang Jingza's heart was currently very complicated. His planned face-slapping operation had been countered by the opponent, and even his revenge plan had been repeatedly disrupted by some mysterious force. This was clearly their number 59 high school's territory, but in the end, not only had this bunch of people for number 60 high school openly come in, they had even planted a red flag on their territory. This absolutely couldn't be tolerated. Gazing out the window, Tang Jingza sighed inwardly. Now that things have come to this, it looks like we can only ask that senior to step in. Him? Speaking of that senior, Fang Huaqing and Liang Wei instantly understood. Given the current situation, they could only ask that senior for help, which was probably the only way for number 59 high school to turn the tables on them. Every school had at least 1 or 2 delinquents. Number 60 high school had 1, and number 59 high school was naturally no exception. There were only 2 days left until the end of the exchange meet. Not only had Tang Jingza's humiliating plan against number 60 high school so far failed, it had even backfired. He had shot himself in the foot and smashed his own toes. In any case, there were still 2 days left, and Tang Jingza felt that it was necessary to win back face. In the morning, Tang Jingza and the members of the student union at number 59 high school found that legendary delinquent senior. He buffed him. The wind blows on campus, and there's a storm everywhere. This was the meaning behind this senior's name. HM. Overall, it was very much in line with this delinquent style. In any case, just from his name, it was obvious that this senior always wanted to stir up big news and was an extremely restless existence. Tang Jingza actually didn't know much about this senior's background. He only knew that this senior he buffing had a number code called 8823. This string of numbers didn't represent his student number, nor did it refer to anything in particular. Instead, it referred to the total number of marks this senior he had obtained in all subjects in the 3 years since the first batch of students enrolled until now, which was only 8823. This was a record low for number 59 high school. Furthermore, this record had yet to be broken. After all the exam subjects were now unified on a 1,000-point scale. From the start of school, there had been weekly tests, monthly tests, and so on, but the total score hadn't even broken 10,000, which sounded a little sensational. This year just so happened that this senior he buffing was repeating his 3rd year in Senior 3. All in all, this was a piece of sticky candy that even Director Xie felt was giving him a headache. If it wasn't for the fact that even Tang Jingza was at his wit's end this time, he wouldn't have asked this great god to stand up for the student union. In the morning, Tang Jingza used the student union's records to find this delinquent senior's number and arranged a meeting place. The men's toilet on the 2nd floor of the teaching building was this delinquent senior's territory. Students who knew the rules usually wouldn't enter this place of their own accord. Otherwise, it was very likely that this delinquent would force their heads into the toilet bowl to wash their faces. As the president of the student union, Tang Jingza had naturally received a lot of reports, but like most teachers, he had chosen to turn a blind eye to them. This was mainly because of this delinquent's background. Because he Boofing's grandfather was the pretentious school director behind number 59 high school. With this layer of relationship here, this was also the reason why number 59 high school hadn't expelled this delinquent. You're the one who wants to meet senior he? Tang Jingza and the others had just arrived on the 2nd floor when a teenager wearing a graffiti vest immediately called out to them. Tang Jingza glanced at this person's style. He was about 7 meters tall and didn't wear his school uniform jacket properly, instead tying the sleeves in a bow at his waist. The most eye-catching thing about him was his 10-centimeter long hair, which perfectly made up for the height gap between them. Even among all the punks, this hairstyle was as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns, and was a terrifying existence. Tang Jingza, Fang Huaqing, and Liang Wei all sucked in cold breaths of air at the same time. This style was really a bit of an eyesore. Senior, is it convenient right now? Tang Jingza asked softly. He felt that he was usually very bad and had bullied a lot of people. But in front of this delinquent senior, he didn't dare be careless at all. The punk snorted and pointed to the men's toilet on the side as he said with a smile, "Senior has been waiting inside for a long time. Go in." Chapter 38. Student exchanges between students were certainly one aspect of the exchange meet between the two schools. But discussions between teachers were also very important. It wasn't even 8 o'clock in the morning when Old Antique was dragged away for a meeting as the lead teacher of number 60 high school. Old Antique didn't recognize a single teacher in the entire venue. Old Antique could vaguely hear what the other teachers were saying about him through the murmurs in the air. Things like he was a bookworm in theory of history who only knew how to teach without any ability at all. Actually, whether it was Old Antique as a teacher now or as a student back then, students who specialized in flying swords and talismans had always criticized the students who studied theory of history. Even though Old Antique was now a teacher, those who taught flying swords and talismans also looked down on those who taught history from the bottom of their hearts. They always felt that these people were very dull and didn't have any real talent. In private, Old Antique had always called this discrimination stereotypes. Old Antique couldn't help thinking of his time as a student. He had heard a lot of gossip, so even when he heard it now, his expression was very calm, and he just sighed at how time passed by so quickly and how it was impossible to return to those beautiful, youthful days. The topic of discussion in the morning meeting between the two schools was naturally the disintegration of the Punk C gang, which had been the hottest topic in the morning papers. This matter had blown up quite a bit. This was because the Peiyuan district branch of the Punk C gang had always been a big problem for the cultivation police station in charge of this area. Now that it had been disintegrated overnight, the students and teachers had spread the news, and as they chatted, everyone found out. "Teachers, quiet down. The regular meeting will now officially begin." The teacher presiding over the meeting was precisely number 59 high school's director, Xie. Seeing that everyone is having such a heated discussion, I'm sure you've all heard about it. This incident happened very suddenly. Although there are still a small number of remnants of the Punk C gang in Peiyuan district who are taking advantage of the situation to cause trouble. But for now, we don't have to worry about students scamming others when they're outside. The focus of this meeting was issued by the General Administration of 100 schools as soon as the incident happened. We mainly want to hear what all the teachers think about Madame Dong's reorganization of the General Administration of Harmony after the disintegration of the Punk C gang in our district. Head teacher Xie's words once again sparked a heated discussion. The teachers whispered to each other and discussed fervently. Her gaze fell on Old Antique, and she noticed that this theory of history teacher from another school was exceptionally quiet as he silently listened to the opinions of the other teachers and nodded repeatedly with a gentle smile on his face. Director Xie's face inexplicably heated up. Some people agreed with the existence of the General Administration of Harmony and believed that it was beneficial. A male teacher nodded. Although the Punk C gang has indeed made many mistakes in the past, destroying social harmony and civilization, and at the same time bringing heavy economic losses to the teachers and students in the surrounding areas. But now that the General Administration of Harmony had been reorganized, it specialized in opposing the Punk C gang and supervising the bad behavior of society. "I think it's great." A female teacher snorted and objected. "What's so good about it? It was just a different method of harassment. When I went to work this morning, an old lady said that I ran a yellow light, stopped me, and lectured me for a long time. My spirit sword ran out of electricity. I was almost late for work." A female teacher at the side was instantly shocked. "Teacher Lin's spirit sword is electric?" "Yeah, I've been grading homework until midnight every day recently, and I really don't have the energy. This new electric spirit sword from Chanel is pretty good, and it's saved me a lot of spirit energy. I can face work with plenty of energy every day." The female teacher twirled her hair proudly, then held out her hand. "The most important thing is that it takes 5 minutes to charge and 2 hours to fly on it. I'll strongly recommend it to all of you." "Really? That's awesome. Where did you buy it? They sell Tian Miao and Jingxi. Are they very expensive? Tian Miao flower. Jingxi promissory note. These things are very useful. Director Xie's face instantly darkened. This bunch of guys, how could they be so undisciplined in a meeting in front of outsiders? What kind of propriety was this? She stole a glance at old Antique next to her, who looked like he was used to big storms. Director Xie Huaichuan's mouth couldn't help twitching. Fortunately, this teacher from another school didn't say anything. Otherwise, she would have lost a lot of face. Suppressing her anger, Director Xie reminded everyone in a low voice. Teachers, please pay attention. Don't go astray. This is a direct order from the General Administration of 100 schools. I hope everyone will take it seriously. The director still had some authority. Hearing Director Xie's words, the noisy female teachers instantly quieted down. At the same time, they looked gratefully at old Antique. It was only when teachers from another school were present that Director Xie would speak so calmly. Normally, Director Xie wouldn't have been able to suppress the power in her body and would have used her pressure to intimidate everyone. Before Wang Ling had set foot in No. 59 High School. The most easily broken thing at number 59 High School was the table in the teacher's conference room. Every time Director Xie lost control of her pressure in a meeting, the legs of the table would definitely break. The rectangular table in front of old Antique had just arrived 2 days ago. Seeing that the scene had quietened down, Director Xie secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Thinking of the chaotic student exchange meeting that Tang Jingze had hosted yesterday, Director Xie felt a lingering fear in her heart. After all, not everyone had the same magnetic field as Lotus Sunday. Furthermore, old Antique wouldn't be able to imitate the National School Bell's electromagnetic gun. But Wang Ling had always felt that, as a fatty, old Antique had his own unique charisma. Before old Antique had come to number 59 High School, Director Xie had done a thorough investigation on this fatty, who had taught at number 60 High School for more than 10 years and had always been the most highly regarded teacher. Apart from being gentle in front of others and behind others from beginning to end, she had never understood what on earth it was about old Antique that attracted the students. The main reason was still old Antique's dexterity in switching between the two images and using them. In front of the students, old Antique usually preferred to maintain an amiable and amusing image when he was in gossip mode. But that didn't mean that old Antique wasn't a reserved person. For example, in the regular teachers' meeting now, old Antique had turned on the second artistic mode. What was an artistic youth? It was saying inexplicable things and doing inexplicable things. He was indifferent when dealing with people, and his reasoning was short and concise. At first, it didn't sound like much, but after thinking about it carefully, it made a lot of sense. To be honest, Wang Ling actually preferred old Antique's second image, because he could always learn a lot from it. But it wasn't easy to see old Antique in this completely different style. So from the moment old Antique had left the school dormitory early in the morning, Wang Ling had been secretly observing him with his heavenly eye. It was very clear that after Director Xie straightened out the discipline, the entire focus of the meeting was on old Antique, this teacher from another school. It was very quiet in the hall, and no one dared to speak. The morning breeze blew slowly through the window, brushing past old Antique's watermelon head and blowing his neat bangs. Director Xie's gaze was blank for a moment, and she inexplicably felt that in some sense, this fatty was actually pretty handsome. Old Antique looked steadily forward as he stared at the bright and clean table, which happened to reflect Director Xie's image. This scene unsettled Director Xie once again. Why is he staring at my reflection? Don't tell me. He's interested in me? Does he like me? Otherwise, why is he staring at me? Old Antique stared blankly at the table, but Wang Ling didn't have the energy to ridicule him. This was clearly out of respect. Who would stare at someone else's face during a meeting? How rude was that? Facing Director Xie Huaichuan, Wang Ling now had very complicated feelings because it was very obvious that this was another old girl in love who was trying to figure things out herself. Wait a minute. Why did he say another? Old Antique had always been the type to take a good look at him, and the more he looked at him, the more he liked him. This was what Wang Ling meant by personal charisma and inner qualities. Inner qualities, understand? How could an average person understand the inner qualities of an artistic youth? Old Antique's inner qualities weren't something that Lotus Sun could imitate. Their strategies were different. Lotus Sun's was a passerby's, while Old Antique's was an Annie's. And so, 5 minutes passed. Director Xie still didn't ask any questions and just felt her face grow hotter as she looked at Old Antique. Like her name, she really was like a young girl in love. Old Antique had been staring at the table for a very long time, and Director Xie's face was full of shame. This was the first time a man had stared at her for so long. Just like that, everyone followed Director Xie and quietly looked at Old Antique. Some of the female teachers had very sharp eyes, and for some reason, they felt that Director Xie's face was a little red. 10 minutes passed. There was still no sound, and the whole conference room was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. And then 20 minutes passed. Wang Ling, Old Antique's hair still fluttered hysterically in the cool breeze. His gaze was gentle as water as he looked at Director Xie. Director Xie, do you want to ask me a question? Director Xie was suddenly stupefied by this magnetic voice. It was only at that moment that she realized she actually hadn't asked Old Antique a question yet. Director Xie's face instantly turned red, and she put on the bashful expression of an old girl. Teacher Wang, I'm so sorry. All the teachers were stunned. What had they seen? What had they heard? And what the hell was this? That sounded a little like she was panting a little. An old virgin who was approaching middle age, who had been in the workplace for many years, and who didn't panic when faced with trouble, had actually apologized, actually blushed. Furthermore, she had actually shown an infatuated expression toward a fatty who taught history. What the F*** K? Was this love at first sight? F*** K. This plot development was a little incomprehensible. Wang Ling was already stupefied. It could only be said that Old Antique was Old Antique in the end. He hadn't even made a bloody hole in the wall, and had actually conquered number 59 high school's toughest old bone. Old Antique nodded calmly, still maintaining the indifference of an artsy young man. Now, Old Antique felt that the time was ripe. At that moment, although the situation was a little awkward, it was time for the artsy young man to save the day. Turning his head slightly, Old Antique swept a glance out the window out of the corner of his eye. In the cool breeze, Old Antique's next words shook everyone's hearts. The wind today is very, very dazzling. In the conference room, all the teachers couldn't help getting goosebumps. Chapter 39. Old Antique's identity had always been a mystery. After Old Antique had revealed his true strength in front of Lotus Sun that day, she had actually sent people to secretly investigate his background. But the strange thing was that they hadn't found anything. If even someone with Lotus Sun's background couldn't find anything, it would be even more difficult for anyone else to find out Old Antique's true identity. Of course, if he wanted to investigate. Wang Ling could investigate in many ways. One of the 3,000 great spells, the Great Recall spell, contained many abilities. It included memory replacement, memory deletion, and memory retrieval. When Wang Ling had searched Old Antique's memories before, he had found that one of them had been sealed away by Old Antique. If Wang Ling forcibly searched it, he would inflict mental damage on Old Antique. So in the end, although Wang Ling was very curious, he gave up. Of course, there were other ways to get to the bottom of this. For example, Headmaster Chun and Director Shi. As school leaders at number 60 high school, they might know everything about Old Antique's background. But since Old Antique had chosen to conceal his identity, Wang Ling felt that there was no need to get to the bottom of it. Old Antique's identity was certainly mysterious to Wang Ling. But apart from this identity, Old Antique was, in the end, just a glutton who loved to gossip and was sometimes funny and sometimes artistic. This was also the image of an immortal master that Old Antique had worked hard to portray in front of his students after teaching for so many years. It had to be said that Old Antique had hidden himself very well. After the short teachers' meeting in the morning, Wang Ling's understanding of Old Antique had deepened considerably. It turned out that in artistic mode, Old Antique had a passive ability to win over old ants. Wang Ling even felt that Old Antique should write a book called Artistic Youth and Literary Girls. As long as Old Antique wrote down all the golden lines that he had been hiding in his artistic mode all these years, Wang Ling felt that he could win over all the middle-aged female warriors in the world. When it came to love, it had always been like a tortoise looking at a mung bean. As long as they met, it was fine. But the love between an artistic youth and a literary girl, Wang Ling said that he didn't understand it at all. Self-strategizing type women are really scary, whether they were young girls or old ants. This was what Wang Ling thought. He didn't care whether director Xie and Old Antique spring had started or not, but the spring radio gymnastics was about to begin. Early spring in Shanghai City was still a little chilly. It was very close to the frozen sea, and every year at this time of the year, it would enter spring a beat later than other cities and enter winter a beat earlier. Some experts believe that the cold air of the frozen sea would destabilize the foundations of foundation establishment cultivators. In the end, for the sake of the students' foundation, the major colleges and universities suspended the radio calisthenics not long after school started. And Wang Ling naturally avoided this problem for the time being. But unfortunately, Shanghai City had suddenly warmed up today. After 2 classes with the students of number 59 high school, not long after Old Antique's regular teachers' meeting in the morning, the school broadcast rang out punctually at 9:30. The students lined up and walked to the field under the leadership of a short students. The 5 people from number 60 high school lined up in a line at the end of the sports field. Wang Ling still chose to stand at the very back. It had been thousands of years since the founding of Huaxiao Nation, and its name had become increasingly fantastical and down-to-earth. From the first set of radio calisthenics, the rising sun to descendants of the sun, from the eagle takes off to Kuan Peng spreads its wings, from the vitality of youth to the passion of building a foundation, from dancing of youth to wushu universe, it could be said that the name of radio calisthenics had gradually evolved from mass square style to fantasy cultivation style. Not only did it praise the flowers of the motherland, it also greatly praised the boundless vitality of a younger generation of cultivators. Some people believed that the names of radio calisthenics symbolized the development and progress of the times. For example, the 250th set of radio calisthenics, Perfect World. Just from the name alone, one could see Huaxiao Nation's boundless hope for a better future. Wang Ling had in fact deliberately broken number 59 high school broadcast speaker before, but he had never expected number 59 high school to actually have a F***King human band. Several teachers from number 59 high school's music department spontaneously picked up their instruments and hit gongs and drums. It was a magnificent sight in front of them. Truly, man proposes, God disposes. Wang Ling sucked in a cold breath at this scene. As the magical rhythm of the music rang out, the first music for the 250th set of radio calisthenics finished playing. The PE teacher stood on the rostrum and used the lion's roar spell to amplify the rhythm of the human band's music, shouting out the beat as he danced. Everyone, follow my rhythm. The 250th set of radio calisthenics Perfect World preparatory section. Step on the spot, go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 2, 3, 4 again. Although the name of the radio calisthenics had changed many times, the overall process hadn't changed much. Once the preparatory section was over, it was followed by stretching exercises and chest expansions. Wang Ling could just about accept these exercises to stretch his muscles and bones. Although the range of the movements was a little big, they basically didn't require much strength. But when it came to the kicking and jumping exercises, he really couldn't stay calm. Moreover, the power of the Tao Talisman seal had been greatly reduced, whether it was the kicking or the jumping exercises. If Wang Ling didn't control his strength carefully, it could lead to irreversible consequences: regional earthquakes, tectonic shifts, landslides, tsunamis, mudslides. All of these could happen. Therefore, in order to prevent the above situations from happening, Wang Ling's radio calisthenics had always been soft. He looked weak and boneless, and didn't dare use too much strength at all. In the words of a PE teacher, he was spineless and effeminate. For this reason, when he was at number 60 high school, the teachers in the sports department used him more than once as a negative example. During the sports team's regular teachers meeting, he had spared no effort in singling out Wang Ling and severely criticized him. Of course, it wasn't that Wang Ling couldn't understand how the teachers felt. This was especially true for the teachers of the physical education department. Of course, they hoped to see the energetic students strutting on the field with their heads held high and their chests puffed out. But he felt that if he got serious and something went wrong, who would be able to bear the responsibility? In the face of the supercilious looks from the teachers around him, he withstood the pressure and finished the entire set of radio calisthenics. Very good. Everything was calm and peaceful. There were no accidents and no casualties. Nowadays, even doing radio calisthenics made one's skin crawl. Wang Ling thought that there was no one else like this. As a child, Wang Ling's strength had been very small and had still been manageable. But as he gradually grew up, his realm and all his attributes increased uncontrollably, and Wang Ling felt that life was becoming more and more difficult. He was on tenterhooks even when doing radio calisthenics. Now that things had come to this, Wang Ling felt that he really had to change the situation. For example, on the night of the next full moon, he could use the Great Moon reading spell to brainwash the entire population. He could completely revamp the radio calisthenics system, change it to something that he could accept. Taiji Fist might be a good choice. Chapter 40. After the morning radio calisthenics, around noon, Old Antique found Wang Ling for a heart-to-heart talk in a small corner. There was nothing else. It was still about the broadcast gymnastics. Actually, Wang Ling understood very well. After all, they were representing the school this time, especially since they were outside the school. He also needed to pay attention to his image and temperament. Most teachers believed that no matter how good a student was at using a spirit sword or how proficient they were at drawing talismans, the ordinary broadcast gymnastics was the event that could best reflect the spirit of the students. This was also the reason why, even in the scientific cultivation era, major cultivation colleges and universities still hadn't banned radio gymnastics. Fortunately, Old Antique was a gentle person. Being approachable had always been one of Old Antique's characteristics. In addition, he seemed to have found his spring after the regular classroom meeting this morning and was in a particularly good mood. After saying a few simple words to Wang Ling to pay attention to his image as a student of number 60 high school, she patted her butt and skipped away briskly. Quietly, Old Antique left, just as quietly as he had come. Looking at Old Antique's current state, Wang Ling instantly thought of this poem in his heart. An amusing, artistic youth who had fallen in love. Sure enough, people in love all have problems with their brains. For the first time, Wang Ling felt that this bouncing Old Antique was a little abnormal. After this private conversation with Old Antique this time, Wang Ling also made a simple assumption. If it hadn't been Old Antique who had pulled him into this little corner this time, but Teacher Pan, who had an even more violent temper. Given Teacher Pan's personality, Wang Ling felt that she might not be able to resist making a move on him. At this thought, Wang Ling couldn't help shuddering. The grass on the grave of the last person to forcibly make a move on him, big young Master Suing, was probably more than 3 meters high. In any case, out of his responsibility to Teacher Pan, and even more so to the people around him, Wang Ling was even more certain of the necessity of brainwashing the entire nation on the night of the full moon. In the afternoon, Old Antique sent a WeChat message to gather everyone in number 59 high school's gymnasium. There were only 2 days left before the all-important Spirit Soar exchange meet. As the lead teacher, Old Antique felt that it was necessary to have a proper training session. Number 59 high school's gymnasium was very big. For most foundation establishment high schools nowadays, the interior space of such a large venue was a completely different world. It didn't look very big from the outside, but the space inside had been expanded by a space expansion spell. In fact, spatial expansion was very common. Take, for example, the storage pocket on the school uniform, or Old Antique snack drawer, which was the size of a supermarket's inventory. He was now very familiar with this technique of simply increasing space. It was completely used in daily life, and the biggest benefit was that it greatly reduced the price of real estate. Those real estate speculators who were hated by the people could no longer stir up trouble. Strange, why isn't Mr. Wong here yet? They had already been waiting for a while in the separate training area in number 59 high school's gymnasium. Lin Xiaoyu asked doubtfully. Everyone had the impression that Old Antique was a punctual man. Let's wait a little longer. Lotus Sun also frowned slightly, feeling very strange at the same time. Generally speaking, as long as Old Antique had agreed on a time, he would either arrive early or on the... He would never be so easily late. He wouldn't have encountered any trouble, would he? Feather Lin asked again. Lotus Sun was silent for a moment. She had personally witnessed Old Antique's strength. Furthermore, Old Antique's identity was a mystery. Even Huagul Water Curtain Group couldn't find out his background. For such a man, it would be good if he didn't find trouble with others. Wang Ling was also silent for a moment. After carefully considering Feather Lin's words, he felt that there was actually nothing wrong with what this Fujoshi said, because Old Antique had indeed encountered trouble, if having his luck in love could be considered trouble. While everyone was talking about Old Antique, speak of the devil, and he's here, outside the stadium, a broad figure was reflected on the ground. Dazzling sunlight slanted in from outside the door, elongating this already broad figure and making it several body lengths taller. Although they couldn't see the face clearly, everyone knew who it was just from the area of the shadow on the ground. In the next moment, the shadow on the ground suddenly leaped up like a ghost, causing everyone to be dumbfounded. Then, in the midst of silence and astonishment, a huge fatty bounced up to them. Super Chun, Hero Gua, Lotus Sun, and Feather Lin were all stupefied. Now, it wasn't just Wang Ling. Even the others could see that Old Antique wasn't normal today. Old Antique's chubby little face was rosy, like a peach blossom in full bloom, and he looked radiant. It was as if everyone could see the sunshine seeping through the cracks of Old Antique's mouth as he grinned. It was really 2F*** King Radiant. Did he win a lottery? Or did he advance to the godlike pinnacle? The corners of Super Chin's mouth twitched as an incomprehensible expression appeared on his face. He felt that he was a relatively insensitive person, but if he could tell at one glance that there was something wrong with Old Antique, then it wasn't just a simple problem. There really was a big problem. Of course, Wang Ling was probably the only one among the know. 60 high students present who knew why Old Antique was so happy. Unfortunately, Wang Ling didn't like gossip, so he kept his mouth shut about Old Antique. Master of Dopey couldn't hold it in, as number 60 high school's widely known gossip monger and omniscient fortune teller. This was the first time Hirogwa felt a sense of crisis, as if his own reputation was about to be destroyed. It seems that you don't know everything. Super Chun deliberately put on a teasing expression. Are you challenging me? Hirogwa raised his eyebrows. There was actually something he didn't know. It didn't exist. He raised his arm, and Dopey very consciously jumped down from Hirogwa's shoulder, then turned its head to peck at its pure white feathers. A normal parrot would imitate what it said from time to time, but Dopey was an intelligent parrot. According to Master of Dopey Hirogwa's own account, Dopey would only speak when he allowed it to, otherwise it wouldn't even dare fart. Everyone clearly didn't doubt his words at all, and Hirogwa was thus given the title of Master of Dopey. In everyone's eyes, this was probably the most outstanding pet that Master Dopey had ever trained in the soul pet industry. Even you don't know about Old Antique. Do you expect Dopey to tell you? Superchin couldn't help laughing. Dopey, show this bastard what you've got. Don't lose face for our soul servant shop. Hirogwa pointed at Dopey and spat out saliva in excitement. The soul servant shop he mentioned was actually the name of his family's ancestral soul pet shop. Actually, from the moment he entered school, Wang Ling had realized that Dopey wasn't simple. Wang Ling had secretly given it another nickname, Ice Sculpture. Because it didn't like to talk, it didn't have many lines of dialogue until now. It maintained an emotionless and detached attitude all day long. Even when Wang Ling usually activated the mind-reading ability, he couldn't hear any of Dopey's thoughts, which was enough to show how aloof this parrot was. Until now, when Hirogwa's saliva sprayed on the pure white feathers that Dopey was so proud of, Dopey finally couldn't take it anymore. It rolled its eyes at Hirogwa in disgust, and then Wang Ling heard Dopey curse loudly in its heart. F*** King retard. Don't you know I'm a neat freak? Hearing Dopey's thoughts for the first time, Wang Ling's heart was shaken. He never thought that Dopey's habit of not talking would actually break down in this situation due to its own neat freak. It looked like this wasn't just a cold parrot, but also a parrot with a temper. Furthermore, Wang Ling could sense Dopey's undisguised and unpretentious arrogance. Perhaps this parrot's owner, the parrot expert master of Dopey Hirogwa, in everyone's impression. Chapter 41. The Great Blood Origin Spell was one of the 3,000 great spells that Wang Ling had mastered. Its proficiency level was medium. One of the branch abilities was called Blood Origin Tracing, which could accurately trace the origin of one's bloodline. To put it bluntly, it was a DNA test. In the spirit energy era, many people had in fact relied mostly on bloodline inheritance to pass down their legacies. The Great Blood Origin spell had been all the rage at that time, and cultivators had fearlessly ventured deep into the ancient tombs of older cultivators in search of their legacies, hoping to obtain a huge boost in realm strength in a short period of time. But now, the state had already strictly prohibited this kind of legacies inheritance. This was because the risk of inheritance was very high, and there was also the possibility of contracting a blood disease. Back then, Huashu Nation's first-generation leaders had specially gathered these cultivators who had recklessly inherited their legacies together and held a condemnation meeting. The crime was called anti-chainism and opportunism. The leaders of the older generation had always felt that no matter how talented one was, one had to rely on oneself to accumulate cultivation step by step. Relying on crooked methods to cultivate definitely wasn't the right way. So after that, the Great Blood Origin spell had declined and was strictly banned by the state as a forbidden spell. Apart from Wang Ling, who had learned it in his mother's womb, there were only a handful of people in the world who still knew this spell. Now, Wang Ling would occasionally use this spell to check on the talent of the people around him. Bloodlines were also a manifestation of talent. When he was a child, Wang Ling had always felt that there were people around him who were born with a golden spoon in their mouths. Unfortunately, to this day, Wang Ling hadn't found anyone of his kind. He had discovered the results of Dopey's blood origin tracing test when he entered school. Dopey wasn't an ordinary parrot, even though it had hidden itself very well. Wang Ling had still discovered it. To be exact, it was a hybrid parrot of many noble bloodlines. Through the blood origin tracing, Wang Ling had seen the following species in Dopey's bloodline: Kuan Peng, Ghost Car, Chongming, Vermilion Bird by Fong. Oh, that was right, there was also a Bobo. Who knew what Dopey's parents had experienced before it was born? Of course, Wang Ling didn't want to know, but the one thing he was sure of was that after mixing so many bloodlines, Dopey had also obtained a unique special ability. Normally, Hirogwa wouldn't show off Dopey's ability in public, otherwise he would inevitably be suspected of performing acrobatics. But now that he'd been questioned by Super Chun, Hirogwa felt that he needed to show his hand. He winked at two balls. The man and the bird had actually made an agreement a long time ago. Internally, there was a clear distinction between public and private affairs. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he still had to give face to the host. When he got home, as a shit-shoveling officer, Hirogwa had no choice but to let go of this master of dopey rogue and pay the price of his public glory. Others might not know about this déjà vu between man and bird, but Wang Ling had already seen through it. It was just that he didn't want to say too much. It was worth mentioning that Dopey was female. Sorry to keep you waiting. Old Antique skipped cheerfully over to them. Before he could say a few words, his wristwatch rang again. He looked at the caller ID and immediately waved to everyone with a red face. I'm sorry, everyone wait for me. After that, he ran to the side to answer the phone. Such a lively Old Antique was beyond everyone's understanding. While Old Antique was on the phone, Wang Ling could figure out what on earth had happened to him. There's nothing in this world that I don't know. As he spoke, Hirogwa carefully plucked a feather from Dopey's body. The moment it was plucked, Dopey's white and slightly plump body visibly shuddered. What are you trying to do? Feather Lin asked, puzzled. This is a writing testing technique and needs 2 eggs feather as support. As long as this master pinched the bird feather, stared at the fortune teller, and said the fortune teller's name 3 times. We'll know the result based on the color of the feathers, Hirogwa said mysteriously. Dopey silently rolled his eyes at Hirogwa. First you spit on my feather, and now you want me to cooperate with you in showing off. Hee, when we get back, you'll suffer. In fact, how is this a writing test technique? Hirogwa made it sound like it was a marvelous technique. In general terms, it was fortune-telling. The main point was that this ability wasn't Hirogwa's, but Dopey's own special ability. In Wang Ling's opinion, this ability, which was a combination of the bloodlines of several divine birds, was a little useless, but overall, the result of the calculation should be accurate. At the very least, it was much better than charlatans who caught people on the side of the road and said, Benefactor, there's evil in between your eyebrows. You're bound to suffer a bloody calamity. Pinching the feather, Hirogwa silently said Old Antique's real name 3 times. Very quickly, everyone saw the originally white and flawless feather instantly turn pink. Pink feather? Hirogwa stared at the feather with an astonished expression. Lotus-sun gave the pink feather a cursory look and asked, Pink feather, what does it symbolize? Hirogwa had long since memorized the symbolic meaning of the color of a feather, but to be honest, he hadn't expected a feather of this color to appear on Old Antique. Thinking of Old Antique's jumping and cheering attitude earlier, as well as this crucial pink feather, the answer seemed to have already surfaced. The answers seemed to have floated out of the water. Pink feathers symbolize luck and love affairs. Old Antique, he's in love. Everyone was enlightened at first. Oh, so he's in love. After a moment of dead silence, there was an earth-shattering roar. What the hell? Dating? Love? Love? This 10,000-year-old Old Antique who only knew how to eat spicy strips had actually started to arrange flowers in his antique vase. Super Chun, Lotus-sun, and Featherlin all felt that this was inconceivable. Is your feather reliable? Super Chin questioned again. F***K. You still don't believe me? I just think it's a little too fantastical. It doesn't make sense to think about fortune-telling with bird feathers, said Super Chun. Wang Ling. So, do you think it's very scientific that bird feathers can change color? Super Chun was someone who didn't believe in superstitions and was very fond of getting into a dead end, especially when it came to feudal superstitions. To verify the authenticity of the feather's fortune-telling, Super Chin unceremoniously pulled another feather from Dopey's body. This time, Dopey's balls twitched violently in pain. Gnashing its teeth, it looked at Hirogwa, although it didn't have any teeth to gnash its teeth with. Dopey didn't care who had pulled the feather. In any case, it would be Hirogwa's fault in the end. Hirogwa, what do you want? Come on, our comrade, Dopey Master. Find someone else to calculate it. Super Chun handed the feather to Hirogwa. Hirogwa silently pursed his lips, then looked at Featherlin. After silently saying her name 3 times, the feather turned dark red. After all, it was her own fortune and misfortune that was being calculated, so Featherlin was a little nervous. What does this color represent? Hirogwa carefully identified the color of the feather and quickly read the message. This red feather symbolizes drawing fire to your body. You have to worry about fire in the near future. Stay away from places with fires for the time being. Featherlin had an incredulous look on her face. This is too accurate. Just last week, the gated jinshi that she had painstakingly collected for many years was discovered by her father and burned to ashes. Superchin didn't believe it and plucked another feather from Dopey's body. Come on, calculate mine. This feather was on Dopey's belly, where the flesh was the most tender, and it hurt so much that all its feathers stood on end. Wang Ling even saw a crystalline tear in the corner of Dopey's eye. Helplessly helping Superchin calculate it again, Hirogwa found that the feather had turned azure blue. He sighed and said, "You have to stay away from water for the next month." Superchin also had an incredulous look on his face. As expected, it's very accurate. Last week, Superchin remembered that he had been swimming in the swimming pool when his foot had cramped. If it hadn't been for the lifeguard who had intervened in time and split open the water with a palm, Superchin felt that it would have been game over for him. Do you believe me now? Hirogwa felt quite helpless. At that moment, Old Antique came back from a long phone conversation, looking even more radiant than before. Students, I have some news for you. Standing in front of everyone, Old Antique didn't hide his wild joy at all. I found you a teacher's wife. Everyone, Wang Ling. So, what was the point of plucking the feather earlier? Chapter 42. Wang Ling hadn't expected Old Antique to announce the news so soon. There were a lot of flash marriages these days, but he hadn't expected there to be so many flash relationships as well. Wang Ling felt that Old Antique might have been unable to extricate himself from the river of love because he had been lacking love for too long. It was obvious that spring had arrived for Old Antique. On the other side, Hirogwa had also entered the cold winter season. Dopey wasn't an ordinary parrot. This wasn't only reflected in its special abilities after mixing various bloodlines, but also in its ability to transform. Dopey could transform, even though it could only maintain its human form for a limited time. But it was enough to train Hirogwa, especially when Dopey saw that a small part of its pristine white feathers, which it was so proud of, had actually been plucked off because of this damn fortune-telling. Wang Ling could feel the low pressure coming from Hirogwa's shoulder, even from afar. Furthermore, he could hear Dopey's thoughts again. Whip, handcuffs, small candle, hiss. Although it was just 3 short nouns, it was already enough for Wang Ling's imagination to run wild. Wang Ling had never thought that playing with a bird could be so exciting nowadays. When in love, Old Antique was even more amiable than usual. This should have been a stress-free spirit sword training session, but Hirogwa's expression was deeply immersed in Dopey's cold pressure the entire time, and he couldn't lift his spirits no matter what. The lesson of this story was that there was a price to pay for posturing. If you wanted to show off in front of others, a bird would drop wax on you behind your back. Wang Ling felt that through this incident, Father and Mother Wang had once again instilled in him a good example of how to be a low-key person. As always, Wang Ling felt that the spirit sword training session, this time, was very boring. What Old Antique taught was a very basic beginner spirit sword course. In theory, a foundation establishment cultivator could fly a sword. But according to the current education system, Huaxiao Nation's General Administration of Education had moved flying a sword to universities. In high school, the vast majority of foundation establishment high school students would be exposed to basic maintenance of spirit swords and basic flying swords. Of course, as students of the elite class, they might also be exposed to more in-depth content, such as advanced sword techniques and swordsmanship manuals, and so on. But for Wang Ling, these lessons still weren't challenging at all. As the saying goes, a true expert doesn't have a sword in his hand, but a sword in his heart. Even a blade of grass can cut through the stars, the sun, and the moon. This kind of highest level of swordsmanship had already been recorded in the annals of history, and most people thought that it was just a legend. But Wang Ling felt that if the Dao Talisman seal was completely undone, it wouldn't be difficult for him to cut a star with a blade of grass. The basic sword manipulation training was mainly to control one's spirit sword to draw the figure 8 in the air. Wang Ling carefully controlled his small wooden sword and restrained his strength as he did his best to hold back, for fear that he would accidentally blow off the roof of the stadium. In the end, thanks to Old Antique's strict grading, Wang Ling's proficiency in the sword control technique was rated 4th out of everyone. Although he was ranked 4th out of the 5, he was still very satisfied with this ranking. The person ranked last was Featherlin. The mother-child sword was not easy to control in the first place. The mental cultivation method and the imperial sword technique were twice as difficult as holding the sword with one hand. What was more, Featherlin had misunderstood the gender of her two spirit swords over the years, so although they had gone through a long period of getting used to each other, the fact was that the development of their rapport had always been delayed. "We can't go on like this." Old Antique put his hands on his hips and sighed, feeling a headache coming on. Although Old Antique, who was madly in love, was a little unusual, he didn't idle around to collect data from the previous Spirit Sword exchange meet between number 59 High School and number 58 High School. On paper, students from the three schools actually had about the same level of control over their Spirit Swords. In fact, number 60 High School had an advantage because Lotus Sun's mysterious sea had already given birth to a sword spirit. To use an old saying from Chinibu, high school students who had given birth to a sword spirit were as rare as phoenix feathers and Chilan horns in all 100 schools, and were terrifying existences. However, the Spirit Sword Exchange meet was a team event and used a team grading system. If number 60 High School wanted to win in this exchange meet, apart from Lotus Sun and Super Chun, who were currently performing the best, the other three had to at least ensure that their final grades were at or above the average. If one of them held them back, the result would be disastrous. It was worth mentioning that although Wang Ling was ranked 4th, his grades were stuck at the city average. Old Antique felt that this was very miraculous. In some sense, Old Antique felt that someone who scored 60 was more capable than someone who scored 100. But at the moment, it looked like Featherlin was the only one holding them back, and the grades didn't look good. The city average score for the Imperial Sword Technique was 65, and Featherlin hadn't even reached the passing mark. But Old Antique was Old Antique. Since Headmaster Chun had sent Old Antique to lead the team, even if this fatty who only knew how to eat snacks was currently having a bad time, his teaching ability was unquestionable. After that, except for Featherlin, everyone else left the gym. There were still 2 hours before dinner. These 2 hours were supposed to be free time, but Featherlin would have to work overtime to train. "Teacher, am I hopeless?" This Fujoshi was obviously very vexed as she lowered her head deeply. Featherlin felt that flying a sword had become the second most painful experience in her life, after those Gei Jinshi had been burned. Girls were thin-skinned, and Old Antique had to leave them some face. If it had been Teacher Pan's teaching style, she would have long since broken out in a torrent of abuse and used all kinds of radical goading methods to stimulate the students' adrenaline. But every teacher had their own teaching style. This kind of reprimanding and goading method didn't suit Old Antique's gentle style at all. Moreover, this was Old Antique who was madly in love. It was even more impossible for him to reprimand a female student who had been thwarted on the road to learning. Compared with Teacher Pan's goading method, Old Antique was better at encouraging education. Furthermore, he was very good at prescribing the right medicine. Flying a pair of mother and child swords was indeed a lot more troublesome than using a one-handed sword. But the principle was the same. The students just had to memorize a few more formulas. For students in the elite class, memorizing books had never been difficult, not to mention that Featherlin herself was a top student. Hence, Old Antique felt that it wasn't that Featherlin couldn't learn, but that she couldn't get into it. Furthermore, Old Antique could see that Featherlin was in a very low mood. In fact, the pile of collectible gay doujinshi that had been burned a while ago was the main culprit behind Featherlin's mood. But Old Antique didn't know anything about this at all, and could only judge based on his many years of experience and observation. After all, investigating a student's privacy in private was quite perverted behavior. In a situation like this, Old Antique had a lot of ways to deal with this kind of difficult and complicated problem. In any case, he just had to give her what she liked. Spirit light flashed in Old Antique's hand, and a book appeared. He handed Featherlin a book that he had prepared beforehand. I hope Student Lin will take a good look at this book. The main character's name is very similar to that of your mother in Child Swords. Featherlin took the book curiously and saw the 4 words, Founder of Devil Path, elegantly written on the cover. Actually, before this group training, Old Antique had already thoughtfully prepared gifts for everyone in accordance with his motivational method as an emergency incentive. For Lotus Sun, he had compiled a list of Wong Ling's favorite snacks. For Super Chun, he had prepared a dumbbell with a gravity system so that he could control its weight at will. For Hirogwa, he had prepared a small notebook that recorded student gossip that only Old Antique knew. Chapter 43. As the wind rustled on campus, there was a storm everywhere. Senior with a total score of 8,823 in 3 years. Senior delinquent. Senior Buffong. Senior Fengyan. At some point in time, he Bufeng's titles and legends had started to circulate in the school. Even he Buffeng himself didn't know when on earth he had been called a delinquent. Perhaps it had been 3 years ago, after his passionate first love in high school had ended. He Buffeng couldn't remember it at all and didn't care. Since he was already regarded as a school bully and delinquent, he Buffeng felt that sometimes breaking a jar was also a way of freeing himself. Ever since he became a delinquent, he Buffeng discovered that he could enter any restroom in the school as he pleased. Only after he was done peeing would the other students dare to use the restroom with trepidation. The cafeteria Annie always scooped the most meat for his meals. Everyone in the school was afraid of him. Even the teachers. Even Director Xie, who always had a straight face, retreated far away when she saw him. To be honest, he Buffeng had hated this kind of life where everyone avoided him like a snake or scorpion. But gradually, he Buffeng began to learn how to enjoy it. What he Buffeng hadn't expected was that Tang Jingze would come looking for him this morning. This man, who had previously caused the teachers and students from number 58 high school to lose their wits, had actually humbly come looking for him and begged him to teach those excessive guys a lesson. These 4 people? In the men's washroom, he Buffeng threw away the cigarette, but in his hand, and stomped it hard under his foot. At the same time, he stared at the photos and relevant information that Tang Jingze had given him. That's them. Tang Jingze replied weakly. Fang Huaqing and Liang Wei shrank behind Tang Jingze, not even daring to breathe loudly. This delinquent senior was indeed as scary as the rumor said. I remember that there were 5 student representatives from number 60 high school this time. You crossed out that Lotus, son? What, are you looking down on me? You think I can't handle her? He Buffeng looked at the information in his hand and smiled. It was a simple question, but Tang Jingze shuddered. Don't be afraid. He Buffeng patted Tang Jingze on the shoulder. After all, she's the young miss of Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Not just anyone can provoke her. What Senior said makes sense. However, my time is limited. I can only help you teach 1 person a lesson at most. He Buffeng pointed at the photo. First of all, I don't have the habit of bullying women. This Featherlin can go first. Senior sure has a good demeanor. Liang Wei flattered. Then, he Buffeng pointed at Super Chun. Secondly, this muscular brother looks very hard to deal with. I didn't want to have a philosophical wrestling match with him while I was teaching him a lesson. According to the information, this person's family seems to have some background. I think we should dispense with it. Then he Buffeng pointed at Master of Dopey in the photo. In this one, he looks very silly. But his family runs a spirit pet shop, and I feel that the parrot in his hand is not easy to deal with. Finally, He buffing turned his gaze to Wang Ling. From the data, this guy seems to be the easiest to bully, right? That's him. Senior, are you sure you don't want to reconsider? After leaving the gym, it was up to Wang Ling to allocate the rest of his free time. Old Antique had made Feather Lin stay in the gym to read founder of Devil Path. Lotus Sun had taken advantage of the fact that the students at number 59 high school were still in class to run to the school rooftop and try to summon the sword spirit to improve their rapport. Super Chun and Hirogwa, these two unmotivated fellows, had scampered back to the school dormitory to play games as soon as they came out of the training camp. Wang Ling didn't need to train, and he didn't play games often, because any equipment in his hands could easily be scrapped. Of course, the wristwatch which Wang Ming had specially developed for him actually contained games. Furthermore, the game library was updated every Monday and included almost all the latest games on the market. But Wang Ling had never played a single game before, because the various numerical values generated during the game could indirectly reflect his reaction, agility, and so on. Wang Ling didn't want that data freak to get hold of any clues about him. Wang Ling had always felt that he was actually a very boring person, and that he had always been a loner since he was a child. Of course, this had to do with father and mother Wang's education. There were many times when Wang Ling thought that if he didn't have this realm and strength, he would just be the most ordinary person in the end. The heavens gave everyone a chance, and also gave everyone equality. The price he had to pay for this unparalleled realm and strength was also very painful. Wang Ling couldn't enjoy games happily. He couldn't make friends who were especially close to him. He couldn't high-five his buddies when he was happy, and he had to tremble with fear even when he sneezed or slept. He had to control his strength at all times and do his best to guard against accidental injuries. This wasn't just a responsibility to himself, but also to others. Wang Ling's deepest childhood shadow had probably been loneliness when he was young. But as he gradually grew older, he had gradually gotten used to being alone. Life seemed to have become a lot livelier after coming to number 60 high school, especially the activities outside the school these past few days, which made Wang Ling feel very uncomfortable and unaccustomed to living in a group, which he had never experienced before. For Wang Ling, this free time was really a rare opportunity for him to have some peace and quiet on his own. How did that song go again? Take a walk with me on the streets of the school. So dirty, so dirty. Whether it was number 59 high school or number 58 high school, which was passed down by word of mouth, there was a place similar to number 60 high school small garden. After number 59 high school had been expanded by that pretentious school director, in addition to the wide tree-lined path in front of the school gate and the new school building, a piece of land had also been expanded behind the school building. It was a cherry blossom forest full of cherry trees. It was the cherry blossom season now, and the forest was dyed pink by the cherry blossoms. Being in the middle of it gave off the feeling of first love. After school at number 59 high school, you could always see some young couples making vows of love under the cherry blossom trees. Chapter 44. Wang Ling reached out to pick up a petal, closed his eyes, and breathed carefully, savoring the fragrance of the pale pink petals. The fragrance of this season was just right for Wang Ling. These were just ordinary cherry trees. Compared with the various spirit fruit trees sold on the market, which were grown from spirit tree seeds, cherry trees themselves didn't have any spirit chi. But they were still an indispensable part of the construction of the school environment. This was the kind of life he wanted to live. Wang Ling very much enjoyed this rare tranquility. Standing silently in the cherry blossom forest, he savored the pure fragrance and closed his eyes, as if he was the only person left in the entire universe. Suddenly, Wang Ling's body trembled again, and he actually shivered. Of course, it wasn't because he was cold from the wind, but because his muscles were spasming for some reason. His body didn't feel cold, and he was immune to all poisons. Any virus that entered his body would be disintegrated by powerful spirit energy molecules. Thus, Wang Ling had never been sick since he was a child, and didn't even know what a cold felt like. Of course, he would occasionally have a muscle spasm, which often happened when Wang Ling was feeling tranquil. It had nothing to do with his body, but was related to his nerves. Even though he stood at the pinnacle of human cultivators in terms of realm, not everyone could understand how lonely it was to be at the top. The immortal king wasn't an old man who prayed in a run-down temple all day long, nor was he a Taoist priest who had seen through the world of mortals. When all was said and done, Wang Ling was just a 16-year-old teenager, and he also had emotions. Although he said that he was already used to it, in his heart, he was unwilling to admit that he was in fact too lonely. Wang Ling stepped on the soft cherry blossom petals as he slowly walked forward. The cool wind brushed his cheeks, and he heard some subtle sounds in the air. Following the sounds, he looked in the direction in front of him. Not far away, several kittens were playing happily under a cherry blossom tree, jumping and pouncing on the falling petals. These were ordinary stray cats, which could be found on every campus. Sometimes, Wang Ling was quite envious of these little things. They were carefree and didn't need to worry. When they were hungry, there would always be a school poop scooper who would come forward to give them food. When they were full, they could play in groups, and when they were tired, they could continue to lie down and sleep lazily. They didn't need to worry about restraining their strength. Staring at these cute little guys, he really wanted to reach out and pick one up, but considering that the effect of the talisman seal was weakening, he finally withdrew his hand. Under the cherry blossom tree, a beautiful boy was happily playing with a few cats. This was supposed to be a beautiful scene where humans and nature coexisted in harmony. But sometimes this kind of harmony would be broken, especially when a person knew the mind-reading ability. As he looked at the kittens, he could clearly hear their thoughts. The big cat in the lead said, "Look, this person has been staring at us." Two cats said, "He might be a pervert." Tri-cat said, "Let's go. He seemed to be trying to grab us, just now." Four cat, "I heard that there was a pervert who specialized in catching cats to make skewers out of. It's very dangerous here." Big cat, "It's exactly 2 o'clock. Boss Zheng Tan has a meeting to attend. Let's go, let's go." Wang Ling, then. The few cats scattered in one direction. Wang Ling had experienced this kind of embarrassment many times since he was a child, especially when the talisman seal was weakened. His aura was a lot heavier than before, and animals and insects were usually much more sensitive to this kind of dangerous aura than humans. However, not all creatures were afraid of Wang Ling occasionally. A few reckless dragonflies and butterflies would perch on his shoulders and hair. Wang Ling continued in the direction in which the kittens had fled. Number 59 High School's cherry blossom garden had a small artificial lotus pond, which couldn't be considered very large. When Wang Ling had entered number 59 High School before, he had heard someone talk about it through his mind-reading ability. This small lotus pond had also been newly built, but there had been a small incident a while ago when a sparrow had accidentally fallen into the water and drowned. The student who liked to cause trouble had named the sparrow Xiaoyue, and then had paid for a stone tablet to be erected on the side, and named the small lotus pond Xiaoming Lakeside. Wang Ling was a little worried that something might happen to the kittens, so he decided to follow them to take a look. These little guys were still too young. Although the water in the lotus pond didn't even reach Wang Ling's knees, it was already deep enough for them. But it turned out that Wang Ling had been overthinking things. This group of kittens clearly had their own secret base. When Wang Ling arrived at Xiaoming Lakeside, it was very quiet, and there wasn't even a shadow of a cat in sight. Wang Ling sighed and was about to leave when he suddenly heard a meow from the cherry blossom tree next to him, and then saw a black shadow fall into the lotus pond. Plop! A huge splash of water. Wang Ling was pretty close to the lotus pond. Under normal circumstances, if he didn't react in time, he would definitely be drenched. But before these splashing water droplets could get close to Wang Ling, they were all frozen in midair. Then, he moved his fingers, and like a receding tide, the water that had splashed up returned to the lotus pond without a single drop left behind. After doing all this, Wang Ling secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Because he had lost control of his spirit energy these days, he had damaged a lot of things at number 59 high school, from a spirit gathering array to a small electronic product. Actually, Wang Ling still felt very guilty. In any case, the water in the lotus pond was public property of the school, and Wang Ling felt that he had saved the day in time. This wasn't time backtracking, but the great gravitational spell, one of the 3,000 magical powers. This sucking palm, that had once become famous in the year the Shao clan's leader's debut, had been partially based on the principle of this magical power. Of course, he could achieve the same effect by using time backtracking, but would also consume a lot of Wang Ling's spirit energy. The most important thing was that after time backtracking, the world line would jump. So unless it was absolutely necessary, Wang Ling didn't want to use this ability lightly. Standing next to the small lotus pond, Wang Ling's eyes searched for the black shadow that had fallen into the pond just now. Although it had only happened for a split second, Wang Ling was still able to rely on his terrifying dynamic vision to determine that this thing was probably a black cat. It was obvious that this black cat had been a little startled. After all, it had deliberately jumped in from here and wanted to splash this person with water. After jumping into the water, the black cat had immediately scuttled to the side, hid by the lotus pond, and started to observe in secret. Then, it had seen the entire process of Wang Ling using the great gravitational spell. I never thought that this person would actually know such an advanced spell. He had formulated a series of plans to mess with Wang Ling, but had never thought that he would fail at the first round. What a bad start. Buffung, who had turned into a black cat, sighed in his heart. He jumped onto a lotus leaf in the lotus pond from one side. After all, it was an artificial lotus pond. Everything from the lotus flowers to the lotus leaves were fake. Moreover, the buoyancy was very strong. It was like a kickboard used for swimming training, so Buffung could step on the lotus leaf steadily. This wasn't the first time Buffung had turned into a cat, so he was quite agile. After all, the way he moved was different from his 2 feet to his 4 limbs. It was really hard to get used to it without some practice. And so this black cat officially entered Wang Ling's line of sight. After a brief confrontation between man and cat, Buffung jumped off the lotus leaf. With a 360-degree Thomas full spin, he plunged into the water. Then, he started to struggle with all his might. Even if Wang Ling didn't use the mind-reading ability, he knew that this guy had done it on purpose. What was more, Wang Ling now knew very clearly that this black cat was actually a human, and had been sent by Tang Jingze to mess with him. Given the current situation, if he tried to save Wang Ling, there would definitely be some other crafty plot. If he ignored it, Wang Ling felt that the other party would definitely accuse him of not saving someone in danger. Furthermore, it would very likely affect number 60 High's reputation. After all, Old Antique had said that every person who came in number 59 high school represented number 60 high school. Of course, he had to save him. However, it was necessary to give him a bit of punishment. Chapter 45. Ever since Wang Ling had personally witnessed Old Antique's art mode with his own eyes, he had also started to sort out his own passive skills. Because sometimes, especially for Wang Ling, trouble wasn't just caused by his inability to suppress his strength. Sometimes his own passive skills were the root of the problem. Thus, over the last 2 days, Wang Ling had actually quietly divided his passive skills into 3 categories. The practical series, the chicken rib series, and the useless series. It could be said that they were simple and clear at a glance. Among the useless series, Wang Ling's deepest impression was a passive branch spell from the 3,000 great spells called Great Wave Palm, called Carp Jump. As long as Wang Ling applauded a person 32 times in a row, that person would act like the Carp King when it used Water Splash, and jump around on the spot without any attack. Then, there was the Chicken Rib series. From the name of this series of passive skills, it was obvious that they were tasteless, but a pity to discard. Some skills seemed very practical, but for Wang Ling, they were worthless. For example, Wang Ling's Infinite Devour passive branch spell from the 3,000 Great Spells was the Great Devouring spell. As long as Wang Ling dropped his tears on food, the food would quickly split into many portions in a short period of time. 1 became 2, 2 became 4. Unfortunately, Wang Ling wasn't a foodie. He just had a soft spot for crispy noodle snacks. Wang Ling remembered that when he had used this spell to duplicate crispy noodle snacks as a child, the number of crispy noodle snacks had increased uncontrollably. At that time, Wang Ling could only open up a tunnel and send these spell-enhanced crispy noodle snacks into the vast universe. Now, these crispy noodle snacks could probably already form a galaxy. Thus, although Wang Ling had a lot of passive skills, most of them weren't very practical. As for the practical skill series, although his skill pool was pitifully small, they were all skills that Wang Ling thought would be very useful for hiding his realm. For example, the Great Shielding spell from before. This spell's passive ability blocked the possibility of criminals investigating him through other channels. And now, in the face of this Black Cat movie emperor flopping around in the pool, Wang Ling's other passive skill had unknowingly been activated. His heavenly, I had the ability to separate the false from the true. To be honest, even Wang Ling hadn't expected that there would actually be someone in a Foundation Establishment high school who knew how to use the transformation spell. This was a fairly advanced spell. Although the general administration of 100 schools didn't forbid the study of transformation techniques, based on the complexity of transformation techniques alone, it was basically nonsense for a Foundation Establishment cultivator to learn them on their own without the guidance of a famous teacher. At this time, Black Cat Movie King had been flopping around in the lotus pond for a full 2 minutes in the face of such a delicate and pitiful kitten. This person actually had no sympathy at all. This is what he buffing thought. He had already placed that punk underling of his in the vicinity. If Wang Ling did anything but watch someone die, this underling would immediately take a photo and leave behind evidence of his inaction. The next day, it would flood the school's Chieba and all the major forums. This little bit of news, as long as it was complemented with a slightly sentimental article, it would definitely cause a bunch of shit-shoveling officials to become agitated and form a joint crusade. At that time, number 60 high school would definitely lose all face. But the premise of the entire plan was that the transformation technique must be flawless. The Black Cat was still flopping around merrily in the lotus pond. Wang Ling stared at the Black Cat. No one noticed that its deep, obsidian-like pupils were blossoming with a different kind of splendor like a kaleidoscope. It had to be said that he Boofing's transformation technique was quite superb. To be able to do this, he could definitely escape the detection of most people at the same realm as him. But unfortunately, a mere transformation technique couldn't escape the judgment of the heavenly I at all. While he Buffung was happily flopping around in the lotus pond, he was surprised to find that the water around him seemed to have become a lot bigger, and his field of view had changed dramatically. Even the black fur on his hands seemed to have disappeared. Strange. This situation seemed a little off, then, after a few short seconds. He Buffing stood up in the lotus pond with a stupefied expression on his face. Even his drenched little brother stood up valiantly and energetically. F***K. He Buffing had never thought that he would turn back into a human. And what terrified he Buffing the most was that even his clothes were gone. Wang Ling covered his eyes, which were stinging from the heat. And at the same time, he cursed in his heart. Who could tell him? Why the hell had he Boofing's clothes disappeared? Getting rid of the fake and keeping the real was a little King thorough. It was a little painful to the eyes. There had to be a bug somewhere, right? This was an unexpected awkwardness for Wang Ling. He was a little regretful. The Heavenly Eye's passive skill wasn't something he could control. The ability to get rid of the fake and keep the real was indeed very good, and could help him identify a lot of false illusions. But it was clear that sometimes it wasn't a good thing to restore the real too thoroughly. At that moment, he Buffing felt a little crazy and a little desperate. It was like using a transformation potion in a game, only to find out that all your top-notch equipment had been swallowed by the system. Furthermore, the feeling of his eggs getting cold in the wind gave him a sense of melancholy. He buffed and covered his face and sank back into the lotus pond. He had never felt so ashamed before. There was no one around, and that punk little brother was still lurking in the distance, completely unaware of what was going on in front of him. He buffed and braced himself and said to Wang Ling in a slightly pleading tone, "Classmate, can you help me find some clothes, Wang Ling?" After thinking for a moment, Wang Ling took off his coat and threw it on the side of the lotus pond. Then, he lowered his head and silently turned to leave. After all, he wasn't Super Chun, and there was no way he would be interested in a naked bro. A youngster with a buzz cut who had a slightly melancholy temperament was walking in the cherry blossom forest. He buffed and watched Wang Ling's back as he sat in the cold lotus pond in a daze. He hadn't expected his transformation technique to fail so quickly, and even more so, he hadn't expected that the guy he was supposed to mess with would instead help him out at his most embarrassing moment. Crawling out of the lotus pond with a face full of shame, he buffed and put on the blue coat that Wang Ling had given him. The sports uniform was longer than normal clothes, and it was just enough to cover He Boofing's most embarrassing parts. It was a good thing that school wasn't over yet, otherwise there would be more people in the cherry blossom forest, and he would really be embarrassed. "Boss, it's all recorded." That punk little brother scuttled out from the side. F***K. What the hell is there to record? Delete it all. He Boofing's face twitched as he recalled how he had seemed to be happily splashing water in the lotus pond when he had just turned into a human. He Boofing felt like a retard. How could he keep this kind of video? Then this person, should we still mess with him? We should raise our hands to welcome such a student from another school with such a righteous view of the world. If it wasn't for this classmate, Lei Feng, I would have completely lost face. As he Boofing spoke, he took off the punk little brother's pants and put them on. The breeze brushed against his bare thighs and light leg hair, making the punk little brother feel a little aggrieved. I'll have to thank this classmate, Lei Feng, later. He Boofing sighed, thinking of Tang Jingze and this bunch of people who crave for the world to be in chaos. He deeply felt the difference in quality between the students of the two schools. He Boofing felt that he couldn't continue to fall like this. Number 59 High School Student Union had to be properly reorganized. The two of them stared in the direction that Wang Ling had disappeared in for a long time. Then, unknowingly, Wang Ling's great shielding spell came into play again. Almost at the same time, both of them realized an important problem. F***K. Wait a minute. This classmate, Lei Feng, what the F***K was his name again? Chapter 46. Wang Ling absolutely wasn't someone who liked to play the role of Lei Feng. He Boofing had brought this upon himself. Wang Ling could ignore it and swagger away. But what Father and Mother Wang had taught him from a young age was that there should be a bottom line in everything you did. Leave a way out for everything, and it would be easier to meet again in the future. Although he Boofing was a delinquent, in the end, he wasn't like that bunch of heinous human-headed dogs from Shadowstream. Thus, in the end, Wang Ling had decided to keep the school uniform after considering the relationship between the two schools. Everyone knew that the relationship between number 59 High School and number 60 High School wasn't good. But when will there be an end to revenge? He didn't know what a mere school uniform could change, but he thought it was worth a try. After all, even number 59 High School's most troublesome director, Xie, had been won over by Old Antique. Anything was possible. Over at number 59 High School, someone's balls turned cold as the wind blew past their buttocks. Elsewhere, in the office of the General Administration of 100 Schools, Ajua was feeling very sad today. In the eyes of outsiders, Ajua, who had become the Deputy Director of the General Administration of 100 Schools at such a young age, was undoubtedly an enviable existence. But no one knew that the pressure on Ajua himself was considerable. On one hand, this pressure came from the leader. The General Administration of 100 Schools controlled all the cultivation schools in Songhai City, including kindergartens. The education bureaus of the major districts had to listen to the direct deployment of the general administration of 100 schools. And above the general administration of 100 schools was the alliance of 10,000 schools. It was under the direct jurisdiction of Secretary Sun.com, a leading cadre of the central government. The position of deputy director was neither a big nor a small one. But from Ajua's point of view, sitting in this position was to receive guests. The director had reaped all the benefits, while he himself could only answer calls in the office. The pressure of a leader directly led to pressure at work, which made Ajua feel even more bitter. On the other hand, the pressure also came from Ajua himself. Ajua was well aware of how he had gotten his position as deputy director. Furthermore, the most terrifying thing was that at the annual meeting every year, a few drunk leaders would drag him along to perform the sky-parting sword, move he had used to kill the sky-swallowing toad back then. In short, Ajua felt very tired sitting in the position of deputy director. Due to the issue of their children's enrollment, many parents came to him to petition. The child's education was a major issue, and there was no way Ajua wouldn't help. Of course, there were also quite a few parents who sent him red packets in private, but he didn't accept any of them. Ajua felt that although he couldn't be rated as an honest and clean model worker, at least he could be considered an honest and upright person. He actually wanted to report his leader and throw caution to the wind. However, he did not have any evidence on hand, especially after the Anti-Corruption Department of Huaxiao Nation's Central Cultivation Bureau had issued 8 regulations and 6 prohibitions. All the leading officials had started to restrain themselves and no longer indulged in debauchery. There wasn't even a single dish at the banquet. The leaders took out abalone-flavored fasting pills from their pockets and put them in their mouths. Then they began to drink tea and chat. Thus, it was even more impossible for Ajua to find any evidence. Ever since number 60 high school's crushing defeat of the world-class killer organization Shadowstream, it had aroused widespread discussion in society. For the Spirit Sword exchange meet between number 59 high school and number 60 high school this time, the leaders of the alliance of 10,000 schools had personally called Ajua to express their fervent interest and concern. In fact, the most important thing was Lotus Sun's safety. After the assassination attempt by Shadowstream, it was said that the big boss of Huagua Water Curtain Group had directly called the central government. Ajua didn't know exactly what they had talked about. But after that, the leaders of the alliance of 10,000 schools had personally called Ajua to inquire about all of Lotus Sun's activities at school. Just this morning, Ajua had personally received a call from the higher-ups over the phone. Ajua could guess the content of the conversation. It was most likely about safety. Shadowstream had lost so many first-class killers this time, and they definitely wouldn't let it go so easily. The Spirit Sword exchange meet between the two schools would be attended by leaders at all levels, and there would be many eyes and eyes. If security measures weren't in place, problems would inevitably arise. In fact, Ajua had been sending people to keep an eye on them for the last 2 days for fear that something would go wrong. If this job wasn't in place, the first person to get into trouble would be him, the deputy director who had assigned the task. Receiving guests and taking the blame, it sounded a little sad, but this was in fact the problem Ajua was facing right now. It wasn't just his job, but also his current situation. That morning, right after the call with the leaders of the alliance of 10,000 schools, an unusual guest arrived at Ajua's office in the afternoon. This person was very tall and wore a black windbreaker that fitted him just right and a motorcycle helmet. At first glance, he didn't look like a big shot. But the moment he pushed open the office door, Ajua was completely dumbfounded and almost cursed in his heart. Duh. Secretary.com? Sun.com, Director of Huaxiao Nation's General Education Administration, Secretary of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools. This old leader with an unfathomable realm was a figure whose every step he took in Jingzhou City. Ajua hadn't had any direct contact with this legendary old leader and had only seen him from afar at previous annual meetings. To be honest, Ajua had a very deep impression of Secretary.com. so he had recognized the visitor at one glance. It was said that Secretary Sun Dakong was a very low-key person in private, and seeing him today, it really was as the rumors said, F***K, a black windbreaker and a helmet. If one didn't know better, they would think it was takeout. Sun Dakong put down his motorcycle helmet and sat down unceremoniously in the guest chair as he sighed faintly. It's been so many years, but this place really hasn't changed at all. His voice was magnetic and even more so had the tone of an old leader, and his words had a special charm to them. There were usually a lot of parents who came to the office to petition, and Ajwa had almost run out of tea leaves. He opened the jars, but didn't find anything good and was instantly a little embarrassed. Sun Dakong smiled at Ajwa. No need to trouble Deputy Director Zhua. Tea will do. I came uninvited today, so it's fine as long as Deputy Director Fu doesn't blame me. Ajwa hurriedly poured Sun Dakong a cup of herbal tea. Were you saying, Secretary Dakong? If there's a problem, just give me a call. This is a special line for the people. I don't have this right. Sun Dakong chuckled. So, I came in person today. I've already made arrangements for student Lotus Sun's safety. If you're worried, Secretary Dakong, that's not why I came to see you today. Sun Dakong waved his hand. With Deputy Director Zhua taking care of student Lotus Sun's safety, of course we can rest assured. The higher-ups have seen Deputy Director Zhua's achievements in the alliance of 100 schools in Songhai City over the years. A few days ago, if Deputy Director Zhua hadn't personally planned and arranged for the defense of number 60 High School to defeat Shadowstream, I'm afraid that it would have been the biggest terrorist attack in the history of our Huaxiao Nation's education sector. If it hadn't been for Deputy Director Zhua, it would have been very hard to predict the consequences. Ajwa, then why did Secretary Dakong come to see me today? Number 60 High School's Spirit Sword Exchange meet is in 2 days. This time, I'll be there as a spectator on behalf of the higher-ups. I suddenly thought of this yesterday and haven't told anyone before. It shouldn't be too late for me to come here and report to Deputy Director Zhua, right? Of course, it's enough for Deputy Director Zhua to keep this to himself. Give me an identity to participate in the event in the name of the General Administration of 100 schools. If too many people are alarmed, there's no point in mobilizing everyone. Sun Dakong spoke frankly with assurance, his expression extremely gentle. In short, it's just one sentence, keep a low profile. Old leader, what are you talking about? Ajwa wiped at his cold sweat. He could already make the connection. If word of this F***king got out, all the leaders of number 59 High School and number 60 High School would go crazy. Furthermore, it wouldn't just be the school leaders. It might even directly alarm the leaders at the bureau level and even the municipal level. Sun Dakong. This person's name was really too resounding. Forget about anything else. Just the fact that his identity was revealed. People would tremble when they heard it. In the past, this secretary of the alliance of 10,000 schools had been one of the 10 most meritorious figures in the founding of Huaxiao Nation. He was an old general who had fought bravely on the ancient cultivation battlefield and made great contributions to the creation of the scientific cultivation era. At this thought, Ajwa's expression couldn't help drifting. Such a figure was actually going to participate in a spirit sword exchange meet between two ordinary high schools. Ajwa felt that this was really too inconceivable. Apart from this, there's one more thing. Sun Dakong sipped his tea. I wonder if Deputy Director Zhua still remembers the demon rampage 6 years ago? That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.